The Flanders Classic season is in full swing, and we're in Belgium for the 77th running of the one they call the Sprinters Classic, Gent Wevelgem. It's only 40 kilometres from the race start in Denzen near Gent to Wevelgem, but the bike riders like to take the scenic route, which means they'll be pedalling for almost 240 kilometres around Flanders fields this afternoon and taking in some very tough Hellingen climbs along the way. I'm Declan Quigley, Brian Smith is alongside, and we're getting set for a sporting battle of epic proportions on cycling's most famous one-day classic roads this afternoon. As you can see, the weather is absolutely perfect for typical Belgian classics racing. That is to say, it's horrible out there. Driving wind and rain all day. The riders emerging from the buses at the last possible moment at sign-on this morning. Eventually making their appearance. A few drowned rats standing up on the podium ahead of sign-on, representing Top Sport Vlaanderen. And of course, they have Wallace in absolutely fine form, and perhaps a favourite for honours this afternoon. So lots of local favourites that will be in the mix, and Adam Blythe as well perhaps could be able to do a job for Orica Green Edge. So this is the scene at the start in the start town of Denze this morning, a little bit outside of Ghent, ahead of this fabled race. 1934, the first edition. This is the 77th Gent Wevelgem this afternoon. In Flanders Fields now, the subheading to this race. It's in memoriam, you might say, to the First World War, 100-year anniversary. 1914, of course, and so many of the battles played out in the First World War took place on the roads, subsequently made famous by riders of the calibre of Greg Van Avermaet. Van Avermaet involved in the crashes that characterised E3 just a couple of days ago. Wasn't able to get into the mix in the final there as a result of hitting the ground, but they make them off certain stuff around here. And Greg Van Avermaet's a tough Belgian who has managed to drag himself onto his bike to see what he can do this afternoon about adding Gent Wevelgem to his palmares. Sepp van Mark is a man who knows that he needs to try and get out of the peloton and up the road, because this, as I say, is known as the Sprinters Classic. We've got 9 tough hills, and of course the Kemmelberg, the most famous of the lot, is traversed on 2 occasions. The second of those comes 38 kilometres before the line. The final climb of the Monteberg, 34k out. Bradley Wiggins makes his appearance, and he's not the most famous English rider in classics riding at the moment, because that, you would have to say, is, well, I was going to say it was Geraint Thomas. He's a Welshman. And the Manxman Mark Cavendish, well, in many people's favourite for honours this afternoon. He's got massed around him an Ethics Quick Step team. That's one of the strongest in World Tour racing. And this is one of the few gaps left on his palmares. So Mark Cavendish with great hopes this afternoon, although I can tell you there's been a lot of action already this afternoon, and the Ethics Quick Step riders have been involved in some of the crashes that are happening in the echelons that are forming out on the coast. So we'll update you with that very shortly. John Degenkolb, winner of Milan-San Remo just over a week ago, and he looks very relaxed indeed, and why wouldn't he? He's already got a monument under his belt for 2015, so things already on the up, and the pressure is off for him. But look at those conditions ahead of the riders, managing to find a smile. There's plenty in there will be grimacing at the thought of what awaits them this afternoon. Well, my name is Declan Quigley. Alongside is Brian Smith at DQ Sport for myself, at Bry Smithy. Hashtag Home of Cycling. Please do get involved, because we've got some very interesting racing for you this afternoon. And please do get involved in the conversation. Brian, the scenes as the riders headed out this morning. Absolutely miserable conditions, and just the way you love them if you're watching bike racing.
Yeah, and some people get inspiration from it as well. They know that many of the riders are not looking forward to this, as we've seen in Dwardor Vlaanderen. The race split apart. That was Wednesday's race, but good weather for E3. Different race altogether. But today they head from Deinze out to the coast towards De Panne, and then they get the cross-wind sections, which we've just had, and plenty of echelons. The main group is split into about 3 groups. Crashes. Gert Steegmans is out, Pozzato's out, You said Cavendish has been involved with a crash. When you say this is the Sprinters Classic, traditionally, yes. But in these conditions, I think it's going to come down to a smaller group finish.
Well, early protests delaying the riders. Here is the graphic illustration of just the route that the riders are taking today. So sort of in 4 parts this race, as the riders warm up on flat roads such as it is, followed by a left turn and a run along the coastal dunes. Plenty of tough energy sapping crosswinds there. Then left again and head east towards the key battleground circuit with 2 ascents of the famous Kemmelberg, followed by a 30-odd kilometre dash to the finish line in Wevelgem. Here's the scene out front. Maximum advantage for these riders, well over 8 minutes, but that's been whittled down now to just 2 minutes and 15 seconds as a result of some pretty frenetic racing that's going on behind. The group, the main group, is split into at least 3 parts at the moment, we understand, but these riders continuing to toil in the wind. And look at the way they're struggling to keep those front wheels going in one direction. It's absolutely hell for the riders today, and they're slogging away as best they can, sharing the pace. And the 7 riders out front, we'll give them a bit of a name check. Alexis Goujard is there for AG Tour Le Mondial. He's in the brown kit with a grimace, just rolling through to the front. The man in the orange colours of Team Rompot is the 21-year-old Netherlands rider Tim Kerkhoff. And coming to the front now is Alex Dowsett of Movistar, perhaps the star in this group. Giro d'Italia stage winner a couple of years ago. He's taken many top scalps in time trials over the last couple of years. Started out with Team Sky, now with Movistar, and making a real name for himself. He's got bigger fish to fry later in April. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Giant Alpecin are represented by Albert Timmer. Good news for John Degenkolb. His team don't have to chase. They have Timmer in there. Tinkoff Saxo are represented by the very experienced Russian Pavel Brut, 33 years of age now. And I think that's pretty much everyone. Mirko Tedeschi also involved in the breakaway group for the Southeast squad, 26 years of age, 2nd year on the team. So 7 riders out front. As I say, they managed to get themselves out of the peloton very early on indeed. Bunch happy to let them go, up over 8 minutes, but there's lots and lots of activity behind, as a result of which now they just have 2 minutes and 12 seconds advantage, and they'll do well to hang on to this. Jesse Sargent, I forgot to mention him, the New Zealander, 26 years of age, top time trialist in his own right, of course. Brian, several of the top teams putting a rider into the break early on, that gives them a little bit of a free pass in terms of chasing, puts the pressure on some of the other sprinter squads.
Yeah, that's what I noticed straight away. Tinkoff putting a rider in there, Pavel Brut. And Pavel Brut, this man here, the oldest man in this group at 33-year-olds. The Russian, 6 years with Katusha, so he just popped over onto the Tinkoff Saxo team. 7 pro wins in his career. Strong rider, one of them being a stage of the Giro d'Italia. So a strong rider to get in a break like this. It does mean that Tinkoff do not have to do as much of the chasing and the riding on the front like they did in the E3 Harelbecker, but a lot of the roads very similar, small, so you know they'll have to do some sort of work in the peloton to keep Peter Sagan out of trouble. But the other big team, as you mentioned, Giant Alpecin, different on the black bike, but predominantly just coming through is Albert Timmer in the black with the red flashes on his sleeves. A lot of black in the peloton, so kind of hard to describe. But yeah, it's important that last year's winner puts a rider in the breakaway, and 7 riders in the break. You just see the speed is down at about 30 k's an hour now, so really struggling into this kind of head crosswind. This is the main peloton, and the main peloton is reduced to about 100 riders.
So BMC on the front, Orica Green Edge just to their right. BMC, of course, in the red colours. And then riders from Lotto Soudal also making their way to the front.
Mathieu Breschel just coming up there. So Mathieu Breschel coming up through the cars. A lot of riders have been trouble getting off their rain capes, and you know, with this buffet and wind, very dangerous conditions for all the riders.
So riders trying to make their way back into the main
Mark
group.
Cavendish.
And there is Mark Cavendish, because I can tell you there was a very serious accident about 15, 20 kilometres ago, which has claimed at least 2 of his teammates. But Cavendish has Trentin, his Italian domestique, great sprinter in his own right, who's managed to shepherd him back into the safety of the main bunch. But just how much has that taken out of him? Because Mark Cavendish has definitely been made to work for this. And as we mentioned, several non-finishers already announced today. Gert Stegemans, we understand, has been taken to hospital following that accident. Not really sure on the extent of his injuries. We'll update you if we hear. But we have also heard that Martin Velets has broken his collarbone and he's out. So 2 significant engines for Mark Cavendish no longer in the fray. We wish them well in their recovery. For Mark Cavendish, though, he's got to, well, they got to revise their thinking a little bit, because, of course, there's some significant responsibility on Etixx Quick-Step to contribute to the chase of these riders. Having said that, I think at this stage, the way that the gap is coming down to those riders up front, they're not really thinking so much about chasing them. The selection is being made itself by the weather conditions and the echelons that are forming at the moment. Don't forget, you can get in touch on Twitter at DQ Sport for myself, at Bryce Smithy for the man alongside, hashtag Home of Cycling. Ben Jackson 1992 says, do yourself and Brian Smith think Wiggins can actually win Roubaix? If so, surely he will. Well, I'm missing the rest of that, but basically that's the big question. Can he win Paris-Roubaix? Well, we'll go some way to finding out the answer to that this afternoon, and how he copes with these wind and his conditions, and whether he can get towards the front, towards the back end of the day's action.
Well, it was a race when he said when he was growing up he wanted to try and win it, and then he started concentrating on the Tour de France, and the two of them really don't mix. It was maybe a surprise to many that he finished 9th last year in Paris-Roubaix, because not many Tour de France winners and contenders get involved with that cobbled classic. So I think he can, because in the past, when Bradley puts his mind to something, he does not leave any stones unturned, and he'll put on a tremendous performance. We have lost Tom Bonin in Paris-Nice with an injury, and in E3 we lost Cancellara. So we've lost 2 very important riders for Paris-Roubaix, but there's still a lot of good riders left. The likes of Sagan and Sepp van Mark and these type of riders, and also you've got last year's winner as well. So it's going to be difficult for Wiggins, but I definitely think he'll be concentrating on it, and let's wish the best of luck, because it's about time that we see a British winner of a monument like that.
Yeah, it was interesting. Bradley Wiggins' comments, he was saying that the dynamic has changed as a result of Tom Bonin's departure from the fray for the classic season. Fabian Cancellara as well, also injured and out, and that's, you might say, has definitely played towards Wiggins and his chances of taking victory in that race. But he said now it's the responsibility of Team Sky, especially given their performances in the early races in the classic season, that it's now up to them to step up and to take control of the races. He was very interesting in his comments about Etixx Quick-Step. He said without Bonin, who really gels and knits the team together, there's lots of riders that believe that they have their own ambitions to go for, and it's a little less of a cohesive unit in that situation. He was quite forthright in his comments, and I thought it was an interesting observation. Was it one that you would agree with?
Totally, 100%. I know that. I know that the team of Etixx Quick-Step are not gelled together as a team unit. Okay, when it comes to when Mark Cavendish is there looking after him, yeah, they ride really well, and they're really supportive of Cavendish. But the Classics riders, they all think they can win. They're strong enough riders, and they don't help each other. Just look at what happened when Ian Stannard attacked in Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, and there was 3 of them there. Tactics, they got it so wrong. Okay, they were up against the stronger man. The strongest man won in the end, and that was Ian Stannard from Team Sky. But again, you look at the tactics in some of the other races, even Dwardeur Vlaanderen in the week. They had a couple of strong riders in the group behind, but yet Kwiatkowski, the Belgian champion, was not deciding to wait. So Wilfred Peters come up and just say, look, no, don't ride so hard. And he ended up 4th in the end. So It's difficult. You have to question Stybar. Did it the fraction of a second he waited for Sagan to react to Thomas? By that time Thomas had gone and lost the race. They had Trenton behind, who was a fast sprinter. So again, it's big decisions, and unless you make these big decisions and big calls, then mistakes are made. But the problem is with Ethics Quick-Step is they all believe they can win, as Bradley says.
Yeah, you called it at the time on Friday. You said that if that it was a great opportunity for Geraint Thomas when he attacked, because there was every likelihood that Peter Sagan and Sagan and Stybar would actually look at each other, and there was that moment's hesitation when Stybar realised that Sagan wasn't going to do the chasing. He was going to have to do it himself, and by then, well, Geraint Thomas had got the lead that he needed. And that
I don't think many people would thought he would blow like that. With three of them being there, we knew that Geraint couldn't leave it to a sprint like the year before and he get beaten. Sagan, obviously the strongest in the sprints, but that's what happens. That's bike racing. He blew up just at the right time for Geraint. He went. Stybar looked at just a fraction of a second to Sagan. He never reacted, and by that time Geraint was gone. But I just still think that Geraint was the strongest rider and he won the race.
Luca Paolini for Katusha in the safely in the main group, along with a lot of riders choosing to stay with the leg warmers for now, although he's clearly given himself the quick option of removing those. Interesting, he'd no number on the back of his bike either, so every chance I think that he's already been on the floor and had to take a spare bike, some mechanical issue or perhaps a crash. Crash is decimating the peloton, but they're still out there racing at the moment. 1:48 now to the 7 riders up front as they grind along in the wind. All sorts of dramas and difficulties for the riders in Gent Wevelgem. 240 kilometers in total, and Sylvain Chavanel. A little bit of a wardrobe malfunction there for the experienced Frenchman. He'll love these conditions, but he won't be enjoying the fact that he can't get his cape off. And the weather conditions improving. We've seen riders divesting themselves of all sorts of jackets and extra bits of clothing in the last few kilometers. Still the situation remaining. 7 riders up front and a large chasing group now, which was split into 3 groups as a result of crashes and the wind. Now that's they've pretty much come back together again. The riders leaning in. It's incredible the way they're leaning in to try and counter the influence of the wind, which I clearly think is probably coming from the right.
This is dangerous. I know there's been a lot in the past about the safety of the riders, but you can just see the wind coming from the left of the screen really blowing the riders across the road. And in fact, that shot we've just seen, you know, they were riding, they were kind of leaning into the wind. Not the best conditions at all, and these are dangerous, and that's why you can see that the rider's been blown off onto the ditch. There's one of the Tinkoff riders, everybody's been blown and buffeted over, so dangerous for a lot of riders. And I think that there is a little bit of restraint in the peloton. See Mark Bramier just comes to the front, they all get blown straight over. Half of the team from BMC get blown, and Stein, you know, these are big riders just getting whang over onto the ditch, and this is a big danger, and we've seen races stop for more than this.
Well, they're incredible the way those riders, and they are big, strong riders. They're the strongest bike riders in the world, and they're desperately trying to stay on the tarmac, and just been ripped across the road. There are no deep section rims in there, I can tell you today. The reports before the start of the race were expectation of gusts of up to 90 kilometers an hour, and that, well, when riders are suddenly, and look at the way it has caused all sorts of carnage in the group. So the bunch, having got itself back together after that last foray, or that last flurry of echelon action, is once again split to bits.
There's a lot of riders not liking this at all. Another rider in the ditch here falling off, one of the Cannondale riders. We've already seen Van Baal on the deck. Riders absolutely all over the place, and you can just see the riders being buffeted the whole time by this wind coming from their left-hand side. Mark Cavendish up right towards the front, but again, if we get this buffet of wind across, touch of wheels, bang, they could all come down. So it's really dangerous conditions out here today.
Luca Paolini's made his way to the front. We saw him at the back a little while earlier, but I think he's realised that the only way to stay safe in this one is to go to the front and absolutely drive it as best you can. Just staying on your bike is an achievement here.
Well, you can just see Terpstra, the safest place to be is at the front, because if you get buffeted, you've not got any kind of wheels overlapping in front of you. So a lot of riders, I feel for a lot of riders on this. I've been here, I've done this, and Edvard Boasson Hagen not really liking this at all. Former winner of this race, now riding for MTN Quebec. So a lot of riders just not liking these conditions one bit.
Yeah, and they are slightly deep section wheels on Edvald Boasson Hagen, as pointed out by Marty GT80. There are several riders in there with deep section, perhaps not as deep as they would normally ride, but I think anything beyond box section aluminium is...
This is absolutely carnage. I can't remember. We see cross winds in a race in Belgium, but I've been training and this has happened, and I've actually been blown off the road over the top of the Yaskabel by a huge bit of wind off the Atlantic. But I've never seen a race like this where the riders have been blown pretty much off their bikes onto the side verges.
Geraint Thomas, sitting on the left-hand side of the group at the moment, must be feeling very nervous indeed. Another nervous man is Arnaud Demar, one of the pre-race favourites, second into Wevelgem 12 months ago, but now finds himself on one of the chasing echelons. You know, in a way, it might be easier to be in one of the chasing groups as well, because they're smaller, because the fight to try and stay in this lead group is proving very, very demanding for lots of the riders. And see the way the professional riders realise that once they haven't managed to make the front group, they immediately try and form an echelon, and then one or two riders trying to jump across. It's absolutely mental out there at the moment, I think is the only way to describe it.
It's not easy for anybody, and you can just see the buffets of winds, and they're coming over, touch of the wheels. Riders have been on the deck, and there's a lot of nerves in here. And you know, we get some of these conditions what we've seen in the Tour of Qatar. Some riders been blown off the roads, but it's dangerous conditions. Just coming to the front is the Bora team rider on the front now, third in the Commonwealth Games last year, Scott Thwaite from Yorkshire. Peter Sagan just comes to the front, but again, bang, he gets buffeted, leaning into this wind. This is really, really dangerous for all these riders. I can't say that more. You can just see just behind as well, Stannard's almost been blown off. So,
well, if a guy like Stannard is struggling to keep his bike upright, you know it's windy out there, because he's one of the biggest, strongest riders in World Tour racing at the moment. Fantastic to see Scott Thwaites doing so well at the moment. He's a man on great form. I actually have him marked on my sheet as a little outside bet for victory this afternoon. Clearly reveling in the conditions such as it's possible to do. And riders being jettisoned in ones and twos. Trek Factory Racing, Danny Van Poppel will definitely have a chance if he makes it to Wevelgem. At the moment, well, it's a crisis point for him.
You can just see this is a long straight road, and you know, still a few kilometres towards the end of it. The riders at the front still prepared to get involved with the race. Difficult conditions for everybody. I think everybody just crossing their fingers and hoping they get over this really bad section of windy road here.
Long straight road. Nobody's squeezing the echelon either, because everybody needs as much room as possible, and you need as many troops as you can possibly get in there. Bora Argonne have two riders. Van Mark, visible there in the centre of your screen in the yellow of Lotto Jumbo.
We've not even hit the climbs yet. We've still got 9 climbs in this race. Still a long way to go. You know, this race 240 kilometres or 39, and you know, still 124 kilometres to go, and we're getting this set Van Mark towards the front now. Just riders all over the place and trying to stay as safe as possible, but in these conditions it's very, very difficult.
And of course, there's been quite a lot of talk recently, Brian, about a definition.
Another problem here. Looks like Mark Cavendish again.
Oh, well, that is difficult moments for Mark Cavendish.
Front wheel puncture.
Yeah, it's all happening for him. Stan Vandenberg waits back with the Manx missile, who watches as another group of riders rolls past. Well, Cavendish seems to have got himself going again. He's on his own for the next little while.
Well, he's had a puncture. He's been on the ditch. And not the best of days for Mark Cavendish.
Well, if Mark Cavendish comes out with the win this afternoon, it's going to be one of the greatest of his career, because the conditions are absolutely hellish out there. But he's managing to fight and survive. He's in the cars.
Probably the safest place to be, Declan. You get more shelter off one of the cars. It's dangerous in the breakaway, so I think Mark will just want to try and stay there as long as possible.
Yeah, very wise indeed.
Absolute carnage. I don't think I've seen a race like this where the riders are just fighting to stay on the bikes and fighting to stay on the road.
Fabulous stuff. If all you have to do is watch it. For those in there,
Testament to a lot of these riders. You put it in maybe another race, some, you know, an amateur race in these conditions, there'd be a lot of riders on the ground. These riders are bumping off each other, trying to hold their position, and you know, they're going from the left to the right hand side. These are very dangerous conditions, yet we've not seen many crashes on this road today.
Well, just one representative of Team Sky in that lead echelon, and that is the winner of E3, Harold Becca, just a few days ago. Geraint Thomas showing the absolutely fabulous form that he's got. Albert Timmer was indicated as having come back from the break, so the break has been mopped up at this point.
Mark is not in any rush here to come past these cars. He knows it's carnage in front. A lot safer just to sit there and get the shelter from the car.
Well, there's quite a gap between this front group, the next echelon, the next series of groups. But the expectation surely is that when they eventually make the turn left and get away from this this horrible wind and get something of a tailwind, that these groups should knit together. But having said that, with a tailwind, it's tough to make those junctions, isn't it?
Yeah, there's probably about 30 seconds from front to back, and you know, we're just looking at the direction the race is going in, and it's not going to be too long till we're off this road, but then again we've got another long straight road to go. We do have a change of direction, and you'd think that it's all about having numbers, and everybody will look around. They're just concentrating on what they have to do, just being safe, keeping on this road and making sure they're not overlapping wheels. They'll turn round, because I know that with so many favourites in this front group, Christoph is there. Just trying to see, Sagan is now gone. He's still, is that him still in the back there? So he's still kind of hanging on. So it's how many teammates you've got. Still 120 odd kilometres to go. Terpstra is there. So if you do not have strength in numbers, I think there'll be a general regrouping.
Luca Paolini found time for a drink there. That's no mean feat, I can tell you. It's a great skill. He's the only one. There wouldn't be too many that'd be brave enough to attempt to go down and get a bottle out, but yes, you have to drink when you have to drink. It's 239.1 kilometres for the riders today. They have to get the food and drink in if they're going to make it through to the finish. Paolini expected to do a job for Alexander Kristoff, the speedy Norwegian, who's on fine form. Oh, and someone had come to grief, but lots of riders.
See, they're talking to the jury now. That's what I was trying to say. Possibly if Cancellara had started, he would have been talking to the jury, but you can just see it look like Bernie Iso having a word now. Mark Cavendish isn't having a word with the Sky team car. It's just, you know, with so much safety put on the peloton nowadays, it's these are harsh conditions for the riders to be involved with today.
Pro Sky fan says on Twitter, I don't think I leaned that much when I was on my harness windsurfing. Mark Cavendish is in the cars. He'll hope to get back into the fray very shortly. It's wet and windy in Wevelgem, and we've hit the cobbles. We're back after this short break. Just under 120 kilometres remain in Gent Wevelgem. They call it the Sprinters Classic, but there'd be few people, well, there'd be long odds, I think, on it being a large group going to the line at the moment, because driving wind and rain on the course this afternoon have decimated the field. They've driven it into several groups on the road. This is the head of the race. They're on the first of 9 climbs to be traversed this afternoon, the Kasselberg. It's a relatively shallow climb, but it is on pave, so it's a little bit of a leg breaker for the riders, and bearing in mind what they've faced already. Normally, Brian, they kind of work themselves into the tough part of the race. It's a gradual wearing down process, but I think there's a lot of riders are worn out already.
I would say so. Normally you have the breakaway, it goes away as they start heading towards the coast, and then we go on to the climbs, and the race starts to build up, and it's all about position and you know, how you ride over the Kemmelberg, twice over the Kemmelberg today. But due to that long straight road there where the wind was buffeting the riders, the strongest riders will come to the front and battle into the wind. And now we've got a group of several of the major contenders. I still think there'll be a regroupment, because nobody, not many people want to try and push this on. You can see Lotto Belisol interested, so is the Ethics. But I think we'll see a kind of general regroupment, but very dangerous conditions. Glad that we didn't see too many crashes. There was some more crashes a lot earlier on, but you rightly said this race has been decimated.
Catherine Gale says John Degenkolb must be the smiliest rider ever, surely. Always looks cheerful. Well, I think it was smiles at the start, but the difference between his smile and his grimace, not a whole lot really, because I don't think there's anyone smiling out there at the moment. Nasser Bouhanni desperately trying to get back into contention. His Cofidis team marked absent at the moment. Orica Greenedge there for company for Bouhanni, one of the pre-race favourites, 6th in Milan-San Remo. And everyone wondering whether himself or Arnaud Démare could represent France with a victory in Belgium this afternoon.
So Jurgen Rollins wants to push on here. I did see that Andre Greipel was up towards the front. You can just see Seberg down towards the back. He's looking behind. Nicky Terpstra is there, last year's Paris-Roubaix winner, on his wheel, but again, no real impetus towards the front of this group. They're having a wee chat. I think you'll see a general regroupment. Not everybody will make it back, but very difficult conditions for everybody today.
Well, Ethics Quick-Step are not going to chase that one. He's not going to come round. Mark Cavendish still chasing behind, not exactly sure where he is at the moment, but presumably in the middle of one of those groups, scrabbling to get back into contention. And riders in 1s and 2s all over the road at this point. It's less echelon, more every man for himself. Hugo Jupa of the Southeast squad, having a fun day out in Flanders. Justine Libertine asks, tell us if you've ever been blown off a bike. Brian, you were mentioning that you've actually been
twice when I was training in Scotland on a descent, and obviously over the top of the Yaskabel and the San Sebastian. Just coming out of San Sebastian, you get the Yaskabel climb. It's part of the San Sebastian Classic, and over the top of the climb, the wind was coming off the Atlantic, and I get blown into the ditch. Landed in the ditch, and there was about 3 or 4 other riders next to me, and that was before the deep section wheels. And I wasn't that as big as I was now, so I was pretty slim then. I landed next to Scott Sunderland, and we've been friends ever since.
That's a way to make friends. Scott beats a Scott.
Soft landing.
While they're grinding their way out, Stephen Betley just says, well, it's March in the Classics. What do they expect? It's just a bit of wind. Well, I think it's a little bit more than just a bit of wind. I mean, crosswinds will drive things into an echelon. Gusting crosswinds with this level of intensity are going to drive riders off the road. So there's just a little bit. I don't want to be sort of an apologist for people who are saying, oh, everything has to be dumbed down and softened up, and
we're an outdoor sport, but there has been neutralisation in some races before in the past. It's all about safety. I believe in my lifetime, because of the wind, one of the stages of the Tour of Britain was neutralised because of the wind. Even the finishing gantry was being blown away and things like that. So safety then. That was a stage into Liverpool a few years ago. Going back in memory serves me right, neutralised stage in the milk race, the Tour of Britain. So that has happened in the past. It's in extreme circumstances, and I thought on that straight road there it did look a bit extreme, but the riders, because of the conditions and the rain and things like that, just wanted to forge ahead. We will see some riders trying to make it back to the front, but this race, whoever wins this race is going to go down in history. A
real hard man, no doubt about it. Geraint Thomas is at the front, must be feeling a bit lonely at the moment. No sign of any other Sky involvement, bearing in mind how impressive they've been in the early season classics. It's a bit of a disappointment for them, but difficult conditions for everyone. And Thomas just rolling through to the front a few moments ago, must be wondering quite what he should do. No doubt he's on the blower, calling for reinforcements. Andre Greipel, a distinctive figure in the centre of shot, has also made it in here.
Well, this is, in fact, looks like the second group in the road, Declan, with Bouhanni there and Greipel. That's why I was a wee bit surprised that Jürgen Rollins was pushing on a little bit in the front group, because I thought that Greipel was there. He's not. He's in the second group. Jack Bauer now coming to the front in the lime green for Cannondale Garmin team. So we will see a general regroupment, and I just think it was a case of Jürgen Rollins wanted to try and keep the pressure on, and probably felt safer in a smaller group in front.
Well, it looks as if there isn't quite the same intensity in the lead group at the moment, and some riders have made the junction, and others I think are going to get back in, but obviously it will have cost them a lot in terms of energy for later on.
I just don't think they know where everybody is. We do have race radios today as a World Tour event, but I don't think the sports directors will know, because they've got televisions in the car, they've got the radios. The radios will be, the radio tour will be shouting out, you know, the numbers and who's in what group. But again, we see no cars, no motorbikes next to this group. So I just think that the sports directors, Adam Blythe, now they're pushing hard on the front for the second group here for Orica Green Edge, trying to bring Orica Green Edge back to the front of the race. But I think in the team cars, they'll just be you know, the information that will be given out is they will not know where all their riders are.
Gerard Zielek from MTN Quebec at the front of the lead group on the road, which is still relatively small and compact. Some riders have made it back in there, but there's a fair bit of daylight between them and the second group on the road. So there's a lot of very serious sprinters who are marked absent at the moment.
Slibar is pushing on, second in E3, Harelbecker, the Czech champion, just behind Gerard Zielek for MTN Quebec. Behind him, Peter Sagan in the fluorescent yellow top. John Degenkolb was also in this front group. Jempe Drucker in the red on the right-hand side for BMC. We've seen Geraint Thomas, Nicky Terpstra is in this front group. They're just trying to pick up as many people as we can. But this race has been just decimated in these wins.
Peter Sagan, one of the pre-race favourites, makes it to the front. He's been on the podium the last 3 years in this race. He knows how to get round Gent Wevelgem and come up with a result. Occupied each step of the podium in the last 3 years. He'll be able to make it second successive victory. We've bet against it at the moment. Very much a small select group. Chasing hard. Group 2 now indicated at 37 seconds. Dan Worry on Twitter says, is there a jersey for most kilometres ridden sideways? If there is, there'll be some scrap for it today. I'm sure all their bike computers are going to show they've done a lot more than 239 kilometres at the end of today.
Just looking at Matt Heyman now. The car actually right. You don't normally see that. The car actually moving towards the one of the groups. So Matt Heyman, the front of the chase group, he's getting help from Jack Bauer from Cannondale.
Now the GPS, not always the most reliable, it should be said, is indicating that the gap is stretching between that front group and the chase group. So while the head of the race appears not to be well, it doesn't seem to be particularly intense, it's still very effective. Riders coming back or riders going forward? The former, I would suggest.
This is Selig of Katusha. I think he's coming back into this second chase group. Selig was involved with a crash in Dwyer Vlaanderen. He was one of the riders that ended in the ditch, but he was trying to help one of the IM riders that was found on the road unconscious. So really sportsmanship from the rider from Katusha. Henrik Hausler trying to chase to come back.
Would have been the big favourite for IM Cycling.
Well, he loves the classics, but he's just trying to get a rear wheel. But he's in this front group. But as we see from these small roads, and because there's groups everywhere, neutral service is not there. Neither is the team car. So unfortunately, an untimely puncture for the IM team. You know, one of their leaders puncturing at the wrong time and is now having to go back to the group behind, and possibly the team cars will be behind that. So unfortunate for the Australian champion, Henrik Hausler.
Now we're on hill number 2. It's the say the second ascent of the Castleberg. And now they're saying it's inside 30 seconds and coming down very quickly indeed to the lead group.
Yes, Daniel Oss, it's now pushing hard. We just see just further down, slightly more in the orange rain cap, Greg Van Avermaet is in this group, so that's the reason why you've got BMC pushing hard at the front. Towards the front of the race, this is the front group. You've got Bram Tankink in the right-hand side, Sepp Van Mark on the left-hand side, but they're not really pushing on. I do think there'll be a general regroupment, and BMC will be able to bring back their team leader, Greg Van Avermaet, who had a bad crash on Friday in the E3 Harelbeke.
So how do you play it if you're someone like Sepp Van Mark, who knows that he can't go to the line with some of the bigger sprinters? It's a long, long way out to commit to a move like this, but he dearly would love to ensure that some of the big sprinters don't make it back in, and then see if he can eliminate those that have made it in a little bit later on.
I think over the last 10, 20 kilometres, maybe slightly more, it's been hard for everybody. And you're right, it's a long, long way to go. There was a group of about 20 riders in the front, but nobody really wanted to push hard and keep the momentum going. So I think this race is just going to get harder and harder. Again, Henrik Hausler is still getting problems. He's pulling to the side of the road. He cannot ride a flat tyre over these cobble sections. So unfortunately for IAM, he is out the race with a pretty much an untimely puncture. Unless he can get a quick change and get into this second group, he might find himself pretty much at the back. Get another puncture here for Paris-Roubaix winner from last year, Nicky Terpstra.
So all sorts of problems for Ericsson Quick-Step. And interesting what their tactics are now. Have they abandoned Mark Cavendish to his own fate? We've seen Stybar going through, willing to set the tempo, willing to contribute on the front of the group.
Well, Lotto Jumbo are just kind of pushing on a little bit now with Bram Tankink. Look at Paulini up there for Katusha. Alexander Kristoff is there in this front group. But I had to check back there. Bram Tankink just takes his glasses off so he can actually see. Sometimes the riders are blinded by all the grit and the mud on their glasses, so they just have to be very careful now. But it does look as if Van Mark is on a good day. And Van Mark is the sort of rider that revel in these conditions. The harder it is, the better Sepp Van Mark does.
So Tankink hadn't run out of gels, wasn't munching on his glasses, just didn't have a chance to put them back on. 112.5 kilometres of torture and suffering remaining for the riders in Gent Wevelgem. It's enthralling stuff so far. You're looking at the chase group, which looks as if it's going to close down the gap to the front group of around about 40-odd riders at the moment, with 110 kilometres remaining in Gent Wevelgem. This is the head of the race, and this is where all the action has been for the last 30 or 40 kilometres and more. We've had crashes, we've had riders desperately trying to stay upright on their bike through incredibly intense gusts of crosswind. And through it all, the strongest men in North European classics racing have managed to drive themselves through these conditions and onwards towards an eventual rendezvous with a sprint finish in Wevelgem. Or will it be a sprint finish? Because Brian Smith alongside me is swiftly coming to the conclusion that we're not going to have a big group sprinting it out in Wevelgem this afternoon.
I didn't think so under these conditions. Groups absolutely everywhere. There has been a couple of riders make it across to this front group. Daniel Oss, the strong man from BMC, was riding in the front of the second group, but he's left his team leader behind. He's made it across the junction. So Greg Van Avermaet is in the second group. You see in our picture at the moment. You can just see some riders trying to come across. Matt Heyman is one of them, the Aussie, just looking behind for Orica Green Edge. But this is the main group in front. You can see the yellow jerseys of Lotto Jumbo. They have got 4 riders, probably the most they've had in some of these early season classics. So Sepp Van Mark has got, looks like Barry Marcus, Martin Telingi and Brian Tankink to try and help him today.
It's Gent Wevelgem in Flanders Fields. This is the first time that the race has had that tagline to commemorate the 100th anniversary of World War I. 600,000 victims fell in Flanders Fields during the Great War, 1914 to 1918. Just one British winner in all that time. Well, since this race started in 1934, and that was Barry Hoban back in 1974. Other English-speaking winners, Sean Kelly, our Eurosport colleague, won it in 1988. George Hincapie took victory in 2001. Arnaud Démare looks like he's going to get back in. Well, mind you, just as I say it, looks like the gap is going out again, having been reduced to around about 22 seconds. Now the indication is it's gone back up to 28 seconds, so it's hovering at or around a half a minute, and has done for, well, 10-15 kilometers now. And eventually either they're going to get back on or the elastic's going to snap, and if they don't get back on soon, well, things could be it could be curtains for them.
Well, there's some strong riders in here. Grifko just going through for Astana, Van Avermaet, Leukemans, Grijpel. There's some strong riders in here. Vandenberg for Ethics. So it's difficult for everybody. They aren't pushing hard on the front, but there is a tempo. A couple of riders have made it across. Labato at the back here for Movistar. So riders absolutely everywhere, and the sports directors in the car will not know where all the riders are. So it's difficult for everybody.
Interesting that JJ Labato has made it in for the Movistar team. They've divided their plans in this race between Labato for the sprint and looking after Nairo Quintana, who's come on a fact-finding mission to Flanders, and kind of relatively benign introduction to cobbled racing in Flanders on Friday in E3. The weather was excellent. He didn't last through to the finish, but he did get a nice sample of the sort of conditions he can expect in the Tour de France in July. But this, an altogether different proposition. We haven't seen sight nor sound of him lately. I would be amazed if he's not already in a team car. This is not racing built for the slight Colombian. A wonderful and a great athlete, but this wasn't what he was made for.
Just looking at numbers, we got a group of almost 30 riders here in front. 4 riders from Lotto Jumbo, as I said, probably one of their strongest performances in the early season. It looks about 3, maybe 4 riders from Katusha as well. For British interest, we do have Scott Thwaites from Bora towards the back of this front group. So Jurgen Rollins come to the front, hands off the bars. Don't think I would be doing that, but back to Matt Hayman. He hasn't made it across to the front group. He tried and they never made it. I think the only person that made it across to the front group was in fact Daniel Oss. You just see this is the second group on the road, including Grijpel, Van Avermaet, Grifko.
Interesting decision, Brian, of Daniel Oss to forge on alone, make it through to the front group. Obviously didn't feel that Greg Van Avermaet was up to it today.
No, but they've got Michael Schär in front, trying to keep the tempo up. Arnaud Démare second last year, also in this second group. Very difficult, but maybe with depleted numbers in front, I think Jempe Drucker is there, and only having one rider in front, he's probably given a nod, try and get across and try and put some numbers, because very few teams have got numbers in the front of this race.
Yeah, and in fairness to Greg Van Avermaet, he was hobbled his way to sign on this morning. He was injured.
Well, he's riding at the frontier. I think he's resigned to try and help. He's not going to sit back. He's riding, and you know, he's maybe thinking of the bigger picture of next week in the Ron van Vlaanderen.
Yeah, he crashed in E3 on Friday. Hobbled, as I say, to sign on, but they make them of pretty stern stuff in Belgium, and Van Avermaet's getting the miles in ahead of battles to come. They might make it in, but at this point they need to make further inroads into the group ahead, and at the moment the signs aren't good. The GPS indicating that they've lost another 3 or 4 seconds. Hayman, big strong Aussie that he is, veteran rider, knows these roads, knows this scene, but hasn't quite been able to get into contention. So just caught out in that echelon section a little while ago. Spent a lot of time in the breakaway on one of the days in Tirreno Adriatico, so he's got good form. He's got plenty of racing in his legs at this point, but Hayman just not quite able to make it across. Gerald Zielek having a little bite, rolling to the front for MTA in Quebec. I'm not sure what the indication there was.
Yeah, they wanted to keep riding. I think it's Barry Marcus from Lotto Jumbo just wanted everybody to keep riding, but there's a lot of passengers in this front group. As everybody knows, there's only one rider from Sky, Geraint Thomas. He's on form. Peter Sagan also in this front group. Can't see any other teammates for him. So there are teams with numbers. They did start riding in the front. It's still over 100 kilometres to go, but nobody really wants to push this far out, and that's why we're getting a little disarray in this front group now.
So Eric's Quick-Step are clearly riding on. Nicholas Mas rolls through to the front, finds that he gets a gap quite quickly, so not exactly total cohesion in this group. And that is the gap between the front and the second group, foreshortened by the camera. Last indication we got was it had come down a few seconds to pretty much exactly half a minute, and they've been scrapping away at this gap for what, 20-odd kilometres at this point, and it's frenetic stuff. It's a match race between two groups of 25 or more.
The thing is, Declan is forcing a lot of riders to race at this point. Normally they'd be sitting in the group just waiting for the finale, but these conditions have forced a lot of the riders to commit themselves, put their nose in the wind, and as everybody knows, that's sapping a lot of their energy. So it's going to be a hard man's race today. It does look as if we've got a group of about 30 riders, then a small group of almost 20, so we could be, in fact, only with 100 kilometres to go, have 50 riders left within contention.
Yeah, still with some of the biggest tests still to come. Remember, they've got to go up the Kemmelberg twice. They've also got a sense of the Banneberg, Monteberg twice, Banneberg twice indeed. Monteberg is the final climb of 9, comes with 34 kilometres remaining, the summit of that 1 kilometre hill. That will be the conclusion of the Hellingen for Gent Wevelgem 2015, after which they'll have that 34-kilometre ride as John Tegenkolb rolls through to the front, replaced by Luca Paolini. Always knows where to be. An Italian rider who really knows how to find his way around Flanders. So Tegenkolb clearly happy to roll towards the front. Haven't seen too much of Alexander Kristoff lately. Presumably he is there.
Yeah, just hiding in the back. We've got a lone attacker now, Martin Talinga, the strong man, and one of the eldest men in the race, going off the front for Lotto Jumbo. So the pressure at the front of the race has just gone out of it. Nobody wants to ride, and so it's allowed this group of almost 20 riders to come back. So we do have about 50 riders left in the race, but this is a time with still over 100 kilometres to go that Lotto Jumbo, having 4 riders in front, have decided that it's time for Martin Talinga to keep the pressure on.
Superb work by Greg Van Avermaet. He did a big turn of work there to connect up these two groups. Martin Talinga finds himself clear of the field.
Daniel Walsh now reacts to it, so BMC trying to... And this is the rider that showed some really good form, was back with Greg Van Avermaet, and he came across that gap pretty much on his own. So he's obviously on a very good day, doesn't mind these conditions, and just saved a wee bit of his energy and is going after Martin Talinga. But he looks back, and Eric's Quick-Step with Nicholas Mas at the front of the main group, and he decides, no, it's still a long way to go.
It's all about managing your energy, and I think you get the sense with Daniel Oss that he really has found a rich seam of form, because he was well to the fore in A3 on Friday, and the previous Sunday in Milan-San Remo, one of the big animators of things on the second last hill. And you think that with Daniel Oss that there's every chance that he could fight for his own success. Not quite the sprinter that he might need to be in races like Milan-San Remo, and indeed perhaps this race, if we do end up with a group going to the finish line. That is the reason that he ends up in the service of others. But Daniel Oss, certainly superb athlete on absolutely flying form at the moment. So now Talinga finds himself clear of the field. 100 kilometres remaining. All set with a big group at the front now. Just under 100 kilometres to go in Gent Wevelgem 2015, and so much has happened already in this race. It's just been one big long bun fight since the get-go. They've 140-odd kilometres in their legs at this moment, and well, we have a lead group all together. momentary cessation of hostilities as riders deal with clothing and try and get some food in after the wind and rain has buffeted them into echelon after echelon. Several crashes, several riders out already, and now we have a front group of around about 50 riders. The second group now on the road, which was at one point the third group on the road, now at 40 seconds behind. And I think every chance of getting back in here because the teams are now having a little bit of a reset, a rethink. The junction has been made between the front group of around about 30 riders and that chasing group of 20 within the last few minutes, as a result of which teams are reviewing just how much in the way of troops they've got up front. I can tell you there is a lone attack, and that is Martin Cilingi of Team Lotto Jumbo. Interesting decision by him to head clear. He's on the Katzberg, which was introduced into this race a few years ago. This race, once upon a time, was a Wednesday race for so many years, and in 2010 they moved it to Sunday, since when I think it's become more important on the calendar. And it really, at one point, it was considered a minor classic. I think these days Gent Wevelgem has been elevated in status. It really is a very, very important addition to any rider's palmarès, should he be lucky enough to get his hands in the air on the run across the finish line in Wevelgem.
Well, a lot of these Flanders Classics were kind of individual races, so they've decided to combine their efforts together. They've got the Flanders Classics, and you know, they're trying to you know, elevate the importance. But just look at the bushes behind blowing, still blowing these riders with a decimation in the peloton. There's a bit of a lull in the action. Get one rider in front. It's allowed a lot of riders to come back to this front group, including Nessa Bahani. We seen Henrik Hauser puncture, and again, a lot of these teams having punctures at the wrong times in races, and for Henrik Hauser it was the wrong time to puncture. But fortunately, there's some groups that managed to come back, and he managed to get into it, because having a puncture at the wrong time in a race like this, your race could pretty much be over.
Yeah, the equipment that riders are using in the Flanders Classic really quite significantly different to the sort of equipment they're going to be using in a 3-week Grand Tour, particularly in France in July. Different wheels, not too many riders on deep section wheels today. Most riders on tubular tires, and maybe just a little bit thicker and more chunky. Jens de Buskeren makes it back in. He's a rider Lotto Soudal will be hoping can be to the fore at the conclusion of today's activities. Well, got himself back on, and he has a little while to try and gather his resources ahead of the hills to come. But yeah, different wheel and tire configurations altogether, really, at this point in the year.
It depends also on your team, because every team is sponsored by different manufacturers, some better than others, unfortunately, but that's what happens. Not everybody, not all the best tires can be used by all the top teams in the world. And again, it's a different setup for a lot of the Classics riders. Most of them use about 26 millimeters in the racing, probably today about 6, maybe 6.5 bar. For the likes of Paris-Roubaix, which is coming up in a couple of weeks' time, they will use 28 millimeter tires, pretty much the whole field, and they'll probably ride maybe 4 to 4.5 bar in their tires. So some teams are deciding to go at a day like this, probably under 6 bar, because it's wet also. So, but again, probably the best tubs for the Classics, and I know the Team Sky, I think, are riding on Veloflex or FMB, which is kind of specialist for these type of cobble Classics, because it's when you hit the cobbles and you want the cushioning, and there is a lot of testing. I believe some of the teams are testing, in fact, a 30 millimeter tire.
Yeah, definitely the vogue is for wider tires in recent years. Mainly it was thought of as being a tire that was more robust, I think, for these kind of conditions. But now, latterly, the thinking is that the wider tires roll better, and the wheel manufacturers are making rims that are compatible with those wider tires. So that's very much the way to go. Can make it a bit tricky if you get a narrow section rim from neutral surface. Your brakes are lined up for 25mm rims.
And some of the tires are in fact clinchers from a neutral surface as well, so it doesn't help, and there's a lot of time and effort goes into many sponsors of these teams, and it just needs one puncture at the wrong time, and you know, your race could be over if you're a really important rider. So luckily for Nicky Terpstra and Heinrich Hauser, they have made it back because there's been a lull in the action, but because their race could have been over just having untimely punctures.
Terpstra's back in. No sign of Mark Cavendish having made it up there. John Degenkolb is certainly there. So too is Peter Sagan. Jens de Buskera has recently just managed to make his way back into the fold. Top sprinter with Lotto Soudal. Andre Greipel is in the front group. So plenty of riders with a fast finishing kick have managed to get in. There's plenty of riders too who wouldn't have a finishing kick have decided to, or have managed to make it into the group. Cilingi is one of those that has decided to forge on his own with 94 kilometers still remaining. It's a big ask. He just has 3/4 of a minute.
Well, he's warming up. He's just unzipped his talk, and I don't know if it was a rush of blood, but this is one of the most experienced riders in the peloton, Martin Cilingi, and one of the strongest at that. And by having 4 riders in that front group, maybe he decided it was time to push on, but he's not really pushing on hard. Still 43 seconds he's got. Still, you know, under 94 kilometers to go to the finish. It's going to be a very difficult day for him if he's any thoughts of taking this all the way to the finish.
So Cilingi 3/4 of a minute as he toils in the wind and rain, and you can see how tough things are out there. He hasn't managed to get his jacket off. He's got to keep his hands on the bars as he makes this little left-hander. He'll go right again very shortly. And he's well served with bottles and gels. Obviously just recently taken that one on. So Cilingi has managed to just about get his gilet off as he mounts another climb. 93 kilometers remaining. Things are heating up again in Gent Wevelgem as the lead group of 50 riders stretches thin on these narrow, wet and very demanding Flanders roads. A lone leader, Martin Cilingi of Lotto Jumbo's out front, with a 48-second advantage as the remaining riders still in contention. One or two have managed to get back on in recent moments. Sepp van Mark, Martin Cilingi's teammate and one of the pre-race favourites, has changed his bike and he's safely back in the peloton. Cilingi out front, 37 years of age now, originally from Arnhem in the Netherlands. Won Tour of Belgium back in 2006, third in Paris-Roubaix back in 2011. If you needed any further indication of his ability and his quality on these kind of roads, that's all you need to hear. String of strong results over the years, but mainly in the service of others. Has stretched his advantage now, just well, heading towards a minute. But is it a folly? What is the point of this attack? It's giving Sepp van Mark a free ride up front, but you sense that lead group is preparing itself for battles to come. All the riders not quite at this point where they're fighting for position. We have, at this point in the proceedings, completed 3 of the 9 hills. The next one up is the Banneberg. It's a very short, sharp shock, 20% at its maximum, 10% average. It's just a few hundred meters, and that comes with 87 kilometers remaining. So very shortly, Cilingi will be the first of the riders left in Gent Wevelgem. Haven't seen any sign of Mark Cavendish in contention. We did see him caught in one of the groups behind. He was off his bike, had to get a front wheel puncture at just about the worst possible moment when the action was at its most frenetic in the crosswind section, when groups were in echelons all over the road. Mark Cavendish, we don't know whether he's still out there racing, but he's certainly not, as far as we can make out, in that lead group up front. Still some of the top sprinters, including the reigning champion Peter Sagan, and the victor of Milan-San Remo just over a week ago, John Degenkolb, safely in the group, and several others besides who would have ambitions to get past them in the finishing sprint, if indeed it comes to a finishing sprint, because with 2 ascents of the Kemmelberg to come and several other climbs besides that, you can be sure there's every chance that a lone leader will be able to forge clear, or perhaps a very small group of the lesser sprinters, the big strong men who don't have the big finishing kick, might be able to distance themselves from the sprinters. So there's plenty of opportunity for great racing to come. But Chilingi has decided to put it down to them, thrown the gauntlet down, and very shortly will have that advantage up over a minute, but he's going to need an awful lot more than that with still 89 kilometers remaining if he's to stay clear to the line. He is, for what it's worth, giving his team leader a free ride, but well, his team leader still has to fight his way into position when they come to the bergs.
Yeah, he's given his Seva Mark a free ride, and he's the other teammates that are in here. I think it's Barry Marcus and...
crash on the right-hand side, so it looks as if...
Paolini.
Yeah, Luca Paolini always seems to be in the right position, rarely on the floor. Luca Paolini looking with disgust, and I think he's obviously got to get service because wasn't able to jump straight back up on his bike.
But just going back to the local Jumbo's tactics there, it's nice to have 4 riders in front. They were starting to ride, no one else wanted to ride with them, so instead of riding in the front, they put 1 rider down the roads, and it means that the other teammates can just, you know, sit and follow, but still a long way to go, and Chilingi is a strong rider, and he's going to be using up a lot of energy on his own, so they will be depleted in numbers when the racing starts. So it's a big call you make. You have to, the sports directors have to make big calls, whether to save the whole strength of the team. There was 4 of them there. Every team started today with 8, so they were in a very good position. So whether they save that strength or put some of that strength down the road and entice others to have to chase. But I think everybody's happy that 1 rider is just down the road at 1 minute. There's still a long way to go towards the finish, and various teams have got interest in just, you know, keeping tabs at the front of this front group and maintaining this speed. But a lot of the riders will be happy now that the main group in this race is only about almost 60 strong now. So there won't be the big fight. Normally when we come up to the Kemmelberg, there's a big fight for position, and the race splits to pieces. Well, we've already seen the race split to pieces. We've had 7 riders on the attack earlier on. They almost had about 8.5 minutes because of the crosswinds and that brutal side wind where the riders were getting buffeted. The race just split into smithereens, and it's now regrouped. So it's settled down ever so slightly, but still a long way to go towards the finish.
Dan Worry on Twitter, at DQ Sport for myself, at Bryce Smithy, or Brian alongside #HomeCycling. He says, don't know if he'll win Gent Wevelgem, but Martin Chilingi will get you a boatload of points in Scrabble. Certainly would that. I wonder what the definition of a Chilingi is. Actually, lone attacker, futile lone attacker. Well, he's put it down. He's put it out there, and he's animated this race, giving us entertainment. Group relatively content to watch him at the moment.
Yeah, Jens Kukeler for Orica Green Edge, deciding to keep the pressure on. Again, it's a lot of these teams have been depleted at the front of this race. So, unfortunately for some teams, I can actually only see 1 rider from AG2R, is Luca Paolini. Comes back to the front of this race. So, in the brown shorts there, only 1 rider from AG2R. Looks as if I have got 2 riders, Chavanel and Heinrich Hauser, who's already punctured. France Edge you, looks as if they've only got 1 rider there, and that's their team leader, and that's Demar. So Demar second last year. So a lot of these teams are finding they do not have the numbers at the front of this race.
This is the Bannerberg, just 300 meters, as I said. Little ramp of 20%, averages 10%, so it's a little stinger. Not particularly long, but it's another short, sharp shock, and it'll be burning matches for lots of the riders.
Manuel Quinziato is now on the attack. It's been closed down by Etis Quickstep. Still towards the front, Geraint Thomas, the winner from E3, Harrowbecker.
Geraint Thomas looks very, very comfortable indeed. Every time the road goes up or the wind starts to blow in a less than advantageous direction, well, Thomas just rolls to the front. You suspect that he can't feel the pedals in relation to the others.
And it's Gregory Rast there for Trek Factory Racing. They lost their team leader, Fabian Cancellara, in A3 Harrowbecker on Friday.
Yeah, disappointment for Fabian Cancellara. Cracked vertebrae mean he's out of the classics for this year. We wish him well in his recovery. So Chilingi's been over the Bannerberg. The group behind thins out. as they race their way onto the lower slopes of this climb. And a big crowd making their presence felt, cheering on these tough men in what's typical classics weather. Not particularly cold, you would say, but the wind, well, that'll seep into our bones. The rain too. Next climb up after this one is the Kemmelberg. Comes in about around about 10 kilometers time. First ascent of the Kemmelberg, first of 2 ascents. And one of the AG Tour La Mondiale riders clearly feeling the pinch. Riders feeling it earlier than they might have done had it not been such an unbelievably difficult start to this race, because the wind really has taken its toll. And plenty of out there going for Geraint for the win. If you would bet against him, not a sprinter, so he's going to have to find a way clear or get himself clear in a group that doesn't include any of the big sprinters. That means isolating the sprinters, so I think they need to get busy to try and thin this group out a little earlier, and then try and get away from the sprinters later on. So it's still a lot of work to be done if the non-sprinters are to have their day. It does occasionally happen in Wevelgem. 85 kilometers remaining, 1 minute advantage for Martin Cilingi up front. Well, the wind is back in Gent Wevelgem as they descend off the 4th hill of the day. They find themselves into a little bit of a crosswind section. Martin Cilingi is the lone leader with that advantage of just under a minute. Here's the second place man on the road, Jens Kukkelaer of Orica Greenedge. 3 riders coming across, and it looks as if we've got a little bit of action once more as riders find themselves all over the road. Nasser Bohani, who had a long chase to get back into contention, has found himself distanced on that most recent climb, and finds himself isolated as well, and doesn't seem to know what to do. And when riders are starting to look behind them, when there's a gap to be closed in front, that's never a good sign. So Nasser Bohani, 6th in Milan-San Remo, looks as if Flanders could be just a bridge too far for him. Meanwhile, riders putting it up to, is this Vandenberg or one of the Ethics Quick-Step riders, just jogging over to this small group, and that would make it an interesting selection of teams up front. Daniel Oss for BMC has a little look over his shoulder to see what sort of damage he's done. Lots of damage will be the answer. And now some decisions need to be made, because there are several teams in here, Brian, and this is clearly the first big salvo from the big teams.
Well, it just goes to show you that you can't afford to relax. Just when there was a lull in the action, everybody was taking on bottles, just relaxing, and all of a sudden you come onto a road like this. Jürgen Rollins is there, Daniel Wass, Kukkelaer, Vandenberg. Just don't know the identity of the top spot Vlaanderen rider there, but good to see them in there after their 1-2 in Dwardor Vlaanderen in a week. So 5 riders are chasing down 1 rider in front, Martin Cilingi. 1 Sky rider trying to come across the group, but this is a savage day today.
Well, Sky, I haven't got too many representatives in that group behind. And it
looks as if he's got, I think it was Christian Knies.
Knies was there with...
but 2 riders coming over. It's Sagan, it's up there, because Tinkoff only had Sagan and Matti Brescio there, so it's either one of them. And he's got 1 rider for company. So 7 riders it is. Sagan coming across with looks like maybe one of the riders from Cofidis, but it's this man here that's on his own. The gap will be coming down now.
Now we arrive into the town of Kemmel, and we're on the lower slopes of the Kemmelberg, the fabled Kemmelberg. This the traditional battleground in Gent Wevelgem. It's been such an important part of the fabric of this race. The tradition of Gent Wevelgem, all about who's strong on the Kemmelberg.
So again, the race is on. Jürgen Rollins at the front for Lotto. Kukelair is there for Orica. Looks like the top sport Vlaanderen rider is Toynes. He was second in Dwardor Vlaanderen. Van den Berg for Ethics. Os for BMC in the reds, just at the back, just trying to see the Katusha rider Satovic, it looks like. Sepp Van Mark comes across the gap.
So Jens Kukelair in the head of affairs there is the man that kicked this off.
And on the wheel of Van Mark was the Paris-Roubaix champion from last year. Nicky Terpstra comes straight to the front. But Sagan being very attentive.
So Sagan has made it across that gap, but it looks as if the group behind is being towed up by Luca Paolini. Paolini, after his puncture, safely back into the group, has made his way to the front and is doing a job of work to tow it back for presumably Alexander Kristoff. As I said, we haven't seen too much of him lately, but he was in there early on when this group first established itself. So Luca Paolini doing a good job, and it looks as if the riders that made the big effort to close that gap might have just wasted a little bit of energy. Geraint Thomas rolls in front of his teammate Christian Knaes. Those are the only two Sky representatives. Questions on Twitter. Part man, part bike is asking, is Wiggins still in Gent Wevelgem? Well, I don't know, but I'm fairly sure he's not in this front group. And Peter Sagan is losing troops from the fray. And that's what's so great about this classics racing, is you very often end up with such few teammates that it becomes a real war of attrition between the riders. Now we've hit the Kemmelberg, 6.2%. It's almost 19%. Those the stats, the vital statistics of a real leg breaker of a climb. And the bad news for Martin Cilingi and the rest is they've got to do it all over again in a little while. His advantage up over a minute not so long ago, now less than half a minute.
Yeah, it's coming down very quickly now, 24 seconds, the first time of the Kemmelberg. They'll hit this again after another 40 kilometres. And then from there, there'll be just under 40 kilometres to go towards the finishing line, but it's Ethics leading the way with Van den Berg and Stibar. Van Mark on the right-hand side in yellow for Lotto Jumbo. Still Geraint Thomas right up there towards the front. Matteo Trentin also up there for Ethics, who won the sprint in E3 for third place.
So now one camera can contain all the riders in front. Cilingi will very shortly be mopped up, thanks to Vela Voices for letting us know that Wiggins abandoned over an hour ago, about an hour ago.
Lobato has made his way up towards the front of this race, so it's swings and roundabouts. Greg Van Avermaet also up towards the front. So just when you thought the race was over for so many of these riders, starting to get their breath back, and we're starting to see some changes towards the front of this race. Kristoff was through there.
Yeah, that was Borsov for Katusha that was struggling and getting tailed off. So an important lieutenant for Alexander Kristoff is being jettisoned from the fray. Cilingi's going to hold on to his lead across the top of the first assault on the Kemmelberg. They're spread wide across the road. Still early days in relative terms, with 78 kilometres remaining. And the leading runners across the front, they're going to be led up, I was going to say, by Stijn van den Berg, the imposing figure. Cheers on Twitter for him. I'd like to see him win if it can't be Geraint Thomas, says Rick Palmer. Well, he's very much a workhorse, is Stijn van den Berg. Knows his role, and I think he'll be putting all his eggs into the Zdenek Stibar basket at the moment.
I was just looking there, Sagan was there, but did look as if the strong men from Ethics Quickstep were towards the fore. Okay, they've lost Mark Cavendish. He's been on the grounds and also a puncture, so he never made it to this front group. But it does look as if Ethics Quickstep does have strength in numbers in this front group. You can see 4 of them towards the front. Trentin just going through there. Stibar is there. Van den Berg. And also Nicky Terpstra.
Nicholas Maas might have been there as well. So they have plenty of reinforcements should they be necessary. There certainly will be necessary. Won't be a group this big when they reach Kemmelberg next time round, you can be sure of that. That will be with 38 kilometers remaining. It'll be the penultimate berg on this year's parcours. And that'll be coming 4 kilometers before the final one, which is the Monteberg. So there's a great atmosphere at the finish line. Great atmosphere too on the Kemmelberg. Big crowd out. We'll now repair to the television to try and see what's happening before they dive out from under the covers once more to see the riders in about another 30 kilometers or so to go. Still Chillingi out front. Behind the front group splits up a little on the descent. This is not quite as difficult a descent as it once was. They used to go straight down the cobbles. For years it caused all sorts of carnage. Now they take an altogether shallower descent.
Oh, somebody in the ditch here.
And we have is it Coquelaire perhaps on the right hand side. It's certainly a representative of Orica Green Edge. Not the first time we've seen an Orica Green Edge rider in the ditch so far this afternoon. I'm not sure that is Coquelaire.
Yeah, we had a terrible crash on the descent off the Kemmelberg before. I think it was Jimmy Casper, if I remember right, had a reel landed in his face and broke a few teeth. But Chillingi is just about to be joined by Jürgen Rollins of Lotto Belisau. Oh, sorry, Lotto Soudal. As you see, the protesters are out yet again. Every Flanders Classic, they're out protesting.
Great collection of tractors, that, isn't it? And they could need those tractors later on today, tow a few cars out. There's a big old crowd around here at the moment. 76.5 kilometers. That group behind is not as big as it was, that's for sure. Jürgen Rollins knits up with Martin Chillingi up front. Rollins pushing on for Lotto Soudal.
Looks like it is a good move for Jürgen Rollins now, obviously feeling good today. Greipel's kind of hanging on to the back of this group, so obviously starting to be distanced, but this group whittled down the first time up the Kemmelberg. Still got another ascent of the Kemmelberg to come.
Well, Mark Jeremy on Twitter, hashtag home of cycling, can't repeat it often enough, says Sepp Van Mark will surely try and break it up. Who has the strength to follow? Who are the riders that are going to try and cut things up? Geraint Thomas, I suppose, is the other obvious
the
rider.
form riders, you think Geraint Thomas looks very good. He's only got Christian Knees with him. You've got Sepp Van Mark, and they're playing a good game today. This is probably the strongest performance they've had this year. They had 4 riders in the front group. They've sent Chillingi down the road. Sepp Van Mark just has to follow. And then you've got Ethics Quickstep, and it looks as if they are doing the chasing at front of the group behind. And they have got various numbers. If it comes to sprint, they've got Trenton, who showed well in E3 Harelbeke by winning the bunch sprint, beating Astley Christoph. They've got plenty of options. Stibar, second in E3 after being in a breakaway with Geraint Thomas, and Nicky Terpstra looks as if he's on some good form today. But a very depleted group in front, only about 30 riders, with Chillingi and Rollins just up front by about 10 seconds.
So now Ethics Quickstep have to take command of the peloton. 2 strong teams with representatives behind have taken control of the race. No responsibility for chasing for the man sitting in 3rd place. That's Sepp Van Mark. We're expecting plenty of activity from him. The man on the front of the group here is one of the biggest men in world cycling, Stijn Vandenberg. Not exactly sure how tall he is, about 6'4", 6'5". He's absolutely enormous. Former winner of Tour of Ireland many years ago. And since then has slotted into a role as one of the leading strongmen.
199.
That's a lot of centimeters. Do a quick conversion there. 75.5 kilometers behind. One advantage for Stijn Vandenberg when he looks behind. It's no difficulty seeing over the group. Karel Cielek is still well to the fore there, isn't he? I think I spotted him at 5th or 6th in line. Winner of Milan San Remo a couple of years ago. Chillingi's a busted flush, isn't he? He's gone. Jürgen Rollins, fresher legs. He forges on.
They played the card, and Chillingi paying for it now, so that was a big effort just on this small climb there, the Monksberg. So Again, a very small group behind, but Jurgen Rollins obviously is loving these conditions on a very good day today. They don't have the numbers in this front group either. It did look as if Greipel, I don't know if he's made it into this group behind, but it did look as if he was starting to hang on the back. But it's a very small group now.
First of two ascents of the Monteberg.
Tell you what, Van Avermaet, been on the floor. That was a hard crash. He went down hard, straight over the handlebars in E3 Harelbeke. He was in the third group, battled his way back. So nice to see him in this front group.
Yeah, superb effort. Greg Van Avermaet took a stage victory in Tirreno Adriatico just over a week ago. To Arezzo, if memory serves. Up the hill there, showing his strength.
Just trying to see if there's any other Lotto Soudal riders in this group here. I can't see any at this moment. So again, who's going to chase? Van Asbroek coming up with it looks like Barry Marcus. So Van Asbroek coming back for Astana.
He's another man. Perhaps has a chance if he can get back into contention. Not really sure why he was behind. Was he distanced?
Greipel right at the back there, just hiding in the black cape there. So the German champion is, and again, Lotto Soudal playing the cards. Greipel just can hang on at the back of this group, but Jurgen Rollins looks as if he's on a very good day today.
And he'll make a point to collect that later on. Jurgen Rollins looking strong at the moment, still a long way to go. Van Asbroek makes it back into contention for Astana. Not sure why he was off the back. Was it lack of legs, or was it some other issue? Arnaud Démare is visible now. We're starting to see national champions colours. They're coming out as the jackets are coming off. So Arnaud Démare and the French national champions, the tricolour colour is on the left, manages to pick up a Francis Dejeux bottle and gel.
So 5 riders now for Ethics Quickstep. Nicholas Mace at the front, Van den Berg, Stibar in his national champs kit, Nicky Terpstra and Matteo Trentin. So 5 riders in this group of about 25 riders. So strength in numbers for Ethics, and the real pressure is on them. They haven't really delivered in the classics yet.
Stibar's national champions colours in evidence, and so too Peter Sagan, Slovakian national champion.
Some people may disagree. Second and third in Harelbeke was good, but as far as this Belgian team, they only count the wins.
Well, afterwards, Stibar said, "Well, I have to accept what it was. I had great legs. It is a great result." And he just hesitated that fraction of a second when Geraint Thomas got away, and that's it. He accepted from there on. So he was relatively sanguine about it. Wasn't too didn't sound too downcast or downbeat.
But Patrick Lefebvre, he just wants to win. He wants to win these races, and second and third's not good enough for him. So he sets a very high standard for these boys, and they're all under pressure. You could see the Stibar when he came across the line, he had his head down, but nothing they can do. But they've got a great opportunity today. 5 riders in this front group. Still a lot of strong men sitting behind them. Kalingi just kind of hanging on here, but Jurgen Rollins is looking strong now. So how long can he hang out the front?
Steen van den Berg is 6'6", 199 centimetres, translates into 6'6" thanks to Pro Sky Fan for that one. Nope, they're all coming. Mark Vallis, everybody's been on the internet. Dan Young wants to know, why are the farmers protesting? I have absolutely no idea. No doubt if you pick up Ed Nieuwsblad tomorrow, you might find out. So Chilingi will be back in the fray very shortly. 32 seconds the advantage, though, for Jurgen Rollins out front. Looks like the front group are starting to get a little bit busier. So that 32-second advantage for Jurgen Rollins. Will he hang on? We'll find out again after this break. "70 kilometres remaining in the race they call the Sprinters Classic." Well, I can tell you, you've only got about 10 or 12 riders up front at the moment, and one rider out clear. That's Jurgen Rollins. On the front, we've got Steen van den Berg looking behind and trying to figure things out. He's taken his radio out, and he won't realise, perhaps he's starting to realise, that his teammate and team leader, this man, Zdenek Stybar, has punctured. He's got service from his teammate Nicholas Mas, and he's back in the cars and making his way back up towards that front group. But Vandenberg was riding on the front there for a little while. But he's throttled back now. This will enable Stybar to get back into contention. It's an important time, I think, for Stybar to take on a bottle. He might need another one again, as the BMCs just try to turn the screw a little bit and make it tough for these riders behind to get back in, and indeed for Stybar to get back into contention. Meanwhile, Rollins continuing to do his own thing up front with that advantage of around about 40 seconds. So it's split up again. We've got a longish run to the next hill, which will be the Banneberg. Second descent of the Banneberg comes with 46 kilometers remaining.
They're waiting for Stybar. Again, you can just see Vandenberg with his radio out, so he'll not hear the calls from the team. So Stybar, again, there's no perfect time to place. Probably the perfect time to puncture. The only time is probably perfect to puncture is when the bunch is just riding along. But they have been riding along at all today because of these winds. So it's been a difficult chase for Stybar. He has had the help of his team with the magic spanner and you know, a bottle coming out, but he's behind the jury car, the referee or commissaire, and he'll soon be back. But Vandenberg doesn't know anything at the moment.
He's confused, isn't he? He knows Rollins is up front and he feels a stall behind. He's not exactly sure why. And Geraint Thomas and is this Daniel Oss of BMC in red have decided that this might be a nice opportunity to jump clear, make the junction with Vandenberg. If Vandenberg is willing to ride, well,
but this was the situation we talked about earlier on, that there was no cohesion in the Classics team with Ethics Quick Step. They want to ride their own race. They lost with 3 riders in Omloop Het Nieuwsblad. And you can see now Vandenberg with his race radio out. He doesn't want to hear what's happening behind. He doesn't really care. He wants to ride for himself today. And yeah, just taking that radio out. I think he talked to Nicky Terpstra. He explained what was happening, and still he just went on the attack. He's not really cared about his team leader Stybar puncturing and trying to make it back.
So Jens de Buskera is trying to make his way across, the Belgian national road race champion, and just making the junction is one of the the radio's going back in, so could be a massive revelation here for Stijn Vandenberg. I suspect we're not going to see him on the front of this little group for a little while.
He puts his earpiece in and he'll probably say, now I've been told not to work. Geraint Thomas is there. Van Mark struggling a wee bit, but the strong man of today has been Daniel Oss, coming from the second group to the first group and willing to go on the attack, and he has looked good. So we've got Daniel Oss, Geraint Thomas, Stijn Vandenberg, Sepp Van Marken just coming across as the Belgian champion, de Buskera.
Wow, that's a very strong group up front. So what are they going to do now? What's Stijn Vandenberg going to do?
Well, he's going to say, I've got my radio in now and I've been told not to ride.
An opportune moment to put it back in his ear, you'd have to say. 5 riders chasing a lone rider up front and being chased in turn by a group of, what, not much more than 20 riders behind, if even that. The klaxons roar as they greet the riders in Gent Wevelgem. Still a long way from the finish and a lot of racing to be done, and this is just being whittled down into tiny groups on the road. I wonder how many people are actually going to finish Gent Wevelgem. I wonder what the record small number of finishes, if that be a term. It's the smallest number of recorded finishers in Gent Wevelgem. Usually it's a group of about 40 or 50. It's far from unheard of for smaller groups to make it to the line, even solo winners. But more often than not, it is a sprint. The Sprinters Classic, they call it.
Not today, it isn't.
Unless you've got a sprint that lasts for 239 kilometers. 65.8 kilometers remaining now, and still lots and lots of racing to be done. Banneberg, to remind you, comes with 46 kilometers remaining, then the Kemmelberg at 38, then the Monteberg at 34 kilometers. Geraint Thomas, he's just itching to get out front, isn't he? Everything that goes off the front, he just wants to try and jump over to it. He wants to race, but such a long way to go to the finish, and sometimes the rider that is the strongest doesn't win because he's so strong and doesn't know exactly how to use the energy. This, our lone leader up front. Rollins toiling in the wind. You get a real sense of just how difficult it is. That's an absolutely beautiful shot, isn't it? As it sweeps across the landscape. Look at the way the road has been battered by the wind. Branches shaken from those trees lining that long avenue. All the dirt from the ditches out strewn into the middle of the road. And Rowlands once again leaning into the wind, coming from his right, our left of screen. And he cants the bike over. It's almost like yachting. He's practically tacking his way up this road, isn't he? 42 seconds is the advantage over 5 riders. I'm sure he must be thinking now, with those 5 riders clear of the group behind, perhaps it might be worth his while just throttling back for a little while, wait for these guys, and then he can contribute to that effort.
I think he'll keep going now because De Busscher, the Belgian champion, is his teammate and he's getting a free ride. He's got 4 strong riders in front of him, so it's a good tactical move from Lotto Soudal. They had 3 riders in that group behind, the Belgian champion being one of them, Rowlands, and they've also got Andrew Greipel in the group behind, so they're in a good way. This is a very important race for them, and seeing the numbers of Ethics Quickstep, you'd think having 5 riders here, they were in a very good position of dominating this race, but you can just see how things change.
So good call, plenty of ambition for Rowlands to keep driving on and make it as tough as possible for the 4 riders behind, keep De Busscher as fresh as possible for as long as possible. Rowlands, relatively relaxed run through the feed for him, in terms of not having any difficulty in picking up his bottle. Haas riding hard behind him. What's happening behind in that group? Have they managed to get organised? Who's taking responsibility? Who's got
it only looks like Topsport Vlaanderen now, the 2nd division team. Steve Barr is up towards the front as well, so with most of the teams here represented, you see one rider up here from Gent, Shimano. I don't think Degenkolb has made it here. You can see Chavanel for IAM towards the front, but again, it's who's got the numbers to chase and who's got the strength to chase. This does look as if this a very good group now is starting to form. Very strong riders. Just looking, Peter Sagan is in the middle of this group, but absolutely no teammates left at all. Lobato's there for Movistar. Again, no teammates. Great to see Scott Thwaites on the right-hand side there for Bora, fighting his way, the Yorkshireman. Seelig is there. Looks like Leukemans. Or is that Leukemans is definitely there, but somebody doesn't like his bike, and that looks like Jack Bauer.
Oh, Cannondale Garmin rider, is it Jack Bauer, has come to grief at the feed zone.
Oh, he's going to make up with it now. Oh, gets stuck in his back wheel.
Is it a jacket or a musette? Jacket. Yeah. Well, that's the statement made by Jack Bauer. His level of contentment at the moment, probably around 0 or a minus factor. Not too much activity in that group behind. As Christian Knaes, he's certainly not interested in chasing it. He's got a teammate in the shape of Geraint Thomas a little bit further up. Luca Paolini has realised something has to happen. Something has to happen, and the Katusha man realised there just aren't the troops behind that are going to be able to do anything. So now this looks like he's decided to go off on what's going to be a very, very tough chase indeed. One of the Trek Factory Racing riders, I think, with ambition to perhaps chase him.
Yeah, this is Rast trying to come across to Paolini. These are the strong men of today so far. Oz for BMC, Thomas of Sky, Van Mark of Lotto Jumbo. Van den Berg has decided he's not contributing and trying to use this breakaway. De Busscher won't contribute because he's got a teammate in front of Rowlands. I'm not too sure if this combination will work. We have got 1 rider in front, that's Rowlands, but only 3 riders with 2 passengers in the group of 5, and it doesn't look as if it's going to work for them today.
Well, De Busscher would be head and shoulders the fastest sprinter in this group, assuming, well, all things being equal, and if he has the right energy at the end, and that's always assuming he makes it. Any energy reserves he had are being saved by dint of the fact that he is getting this free passage at the moment.
Well, they have got a passenger, the Belgian champion. Van den Berg looked as if he wasn't totally content and willing to help these other riders, because they did have 5 in front, and they'd probably be a lot more happy at Ethics Quickstep if they had one other rider here, because this is the man really on form. Geraint Thomas does look exceptionally well. Van Mark really up for a win today as well, has looked well, and Lotto Jumbo have ridden a good race. BMC rider Daniel Oss is looking strong. He's attacking Poggio, Milan San Remo. It does look strong, but just a nod of the head, a push in the back for Van Mark from Stijn Vandenberg. He's playing a canny game. He knows that he had his earpiece out, he got himself in the breakaway, and he's sitting pretty. Doesn't have to contribute too much because he does have 4 riders behind.
43 seconds between Rollins and this group behind. Rollins is doing a manful job at the moment, because there's 3 riders riding up in this group, just 1 rider behind. And what's the advantage between Group 2 and Group 3? Because that is the really interesting time gap.
I just don't think this is the right combination here. Geraint is there, Oss and Van Mark, they want to ride, but they've got a couple of passengers now. But this man won't worry about it. He's on his own, 47 seconds in front. They have plenty of options. He just has to commit himself. Still a long way to go, just over 62 kilometres. He knows he's got Debuchery, the Belgian champion, behind, and they know they have Andrew Greipel also, so they do have options.
Yeah, how content will the others to be towing a sprinter of the calibre of Jens Debuchery around with them? At the moment, they'll be happy to have separated themselves from all the other good sprinters that have managed to survive in that group behind. Not that there are too many at this point. Jürgen Rollins, we did see some evidence from Topsport Vlaanderen attempting to organise some sort of a chase behind, albeit with just a couple of representatives in the group. Not sure if one of them was Jelle Wallace. He's their superstar. Took the Dwarfstor Vlaanderen just a few days ago.
This is Paulini trying to come across here. Left a little late. These 5 riders in front. Just behind, you've got to look at Paulini off Katusha. Still Jürgen Rollins in front for Lotto Soudal.
Sepp Van Mark rides through, and they're getting a turn now from Stijn Vandenberg. So interesting that he is riding through now. It's obviously a change of heart. 55 seconds to Rollins up front. Has that contributed to the thinking?
Wouldn't say this is the smartest move for Vandenberg, especially when they had 5 riders behind, and Paulini coming up here, and who's going to chase? You think that Katusha had a couple of riders there to help Christoph. They're deciding to put Paulini down the roads. So who is left to chase behind? This gap creeping up ever more. 55 seconds now to Rollins, with this group of 5 soon to be joined by Paulini, not giving 100%.
Jürgen Rollins now 29 years of age. Belgian rider. He's been with this team for, well, since 2012. He signed up through till 2017. So he's got a contract for the next couple of years. And 7th in E3 on Friday. Clearly has very strong form indeed. On the Eurometropole Tour in 2012. 3rd in Tour de Flanders in 2013. 2nd in E3 in 2011. Still waiting for the massive win on Flanders roads, but one of the most capable classics riders out there, and really putting it up. And look at this, 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Is it game over? Still 60 kilometers left. There's a long way to go.
Well, the thing is, who's going to chase? You know, you look at the riders that are in front now, and who's going to chase? You've got Wanty Group Gobert. You've got one rider from Giant Alpecin there on the right-hand side. You've got one rider from Tinkoff, Sagan. You've got Searlick for MTN Quebecer. So again, it's all about numbers.
Savage ride here by Paulini. Paulini is just about managing to haul and winch himself across this gap. These riders are riding up there, have a little look around, and suddenly realize they've been joined by the veteran Italian from Team Katusha. Has been given free rein to take his own chances this afternoon. Worked in the service of Alexander Christoph in recent days, but Paulini has now managed to race across, making it a group of 6, chasing the lone leader. That is Jürgen Rollins, and that's another contributor to the chase. He'll take a few moments just to gather his breath, get a gel. So Oss rolling through for BMC. 60 kilometres remaining in Gent Wevelgem, with Jürgen Rollens up front now with almost 50 seconds advantage on the group of 6 behind. It's been carnage all afternoon. Amazing racing on the Flanders roads. Huge gusts of wind whipping across the riders, driving them into echelons. Riders struggling to stay on their bikes, not just the usual touch of wheel type crashes, but crashes as a result of riders just being literally swept off the road in great big groups. And as a result, well, the racing kicked off a lot earlier than you might expect. We're not the slow burner. This one has been absolutely frenetic right from the start. And now we have a situation where Jürgen Rollens is the sole leader, chased by a group of 6. And now that, would you believe it, is the remains of the peloton in the race they call the Sprinters Classic. 2 minutes in arrears of Jürgen Rollens, 1 minute and 10 seconds behind the group of 6 up front, containing, well, representatives of most of the major teams. Top Sport Vlaanderen have missed out from the second tier. Arnaud Demar is in there. No Francis de Jure representative in the group. And this is the group of 6 that are chasing Rollens, with Geraint Thomas, winner of E3 just a couple of days ago, in absolutely flying form, finds himself up front. Daniel Oss there for BMC, the imposing figure. Even more imposing figure of Etixx Quickstep in the shape of Stijn van den Berg. Sepp van Mark gives a little encouraging push to Geraint Thomas. Sooner or later, Van Mark's going to get a really big result, and he's got a great opportunity today.
Just don't think this race is over yet. There's still a long way to go, and I don't think Etixx, and showing it now, will be overly happy just having one representative in front. It's a big race for them, and you know, 2 up there for Lotto Soudal, so a big effort there. Ras never made it. That was the point to go with Paulini, so he didn't make it. Matteo Trentin comes up, Quinziato on the wheel. So is Greg Van Avermaet, but no real concerted chase. A lot of single riders from different teams. You can see Tinkoff gets Sagan there. One rider from Cofidis, one rider from MTN Quebec, one rider from Cannondale. Jack Bauer is obviously made up with his bike. One rider from Movistar. So again, no real numbers to get involved with this chase.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating, because Stijn van den Berg up front initially kicked this off while his team leader, the rider you would expect would be his team leader, following the absence from the fray of Mark Cavendish. That's Zdeněk Štibar. Štibar had punctured, was making his way back to the group at the very moment that Stijn van den Berg happened to have his radio out of his ear and didn't realize what was happening, rolled off the front. He's now contributing to the effort to try and stay clear. And Thomas is off. And that is a big problem for the winner of E3. Rolls over, and we only hope that he is okay. And that is a big moment in Gent Wevelgem, because the winner of E3 2 days ago, and probably the strongest rider at the moment, and in that group, a shake of the head from Daniel Oss, as if to say, well, there, but for the grace of all sorts of gods go I, because that was a close one. Now, what has happened? We see in the background, the Sky team car was stopped and helping Geraint Thomas to get back into the fray, but it'd be a very impressive ride if Geraint Thomas is able to get back into that group.
He did land in the verge. Looked as if he did have a soft enough landing, but you don't want to see riders crash like that, being blown off the road. So we've seen this all day. But tiredness is starting to hit the riders, and unfortunately just get blown off, and you know, into the verge he went and over he went. So you'll find yourself in this group, which will change the dynamics again. Christian Knies is in the group behind. So this race, for me, I don't think is quite over yet. Etixx Quickstep possibly will want to try and get a smaller chase group involved.
So now, has Christian Knies got the legs to really be of significant advantage to Geraint Thomas? Thomas, is he back on his bike? There's the scene, and the Sky team car now going up alongside to give their instructions, and perhaps a bottle to Geraint Thomas. No doubt there'll be a little bit of shelter being provided there as well. I don't think it's coming from the other side, isn't it?
There's not a lot you can do in this circumstance, because the race is splitting up. We are into the finale of a race, and I know we saw Štibar get the magic spanner and a couple of bottles out. There's not a lot he can do because he's in the middle of nowhere, and obviously the referees and commissaires will be watching this.
Yeah, it's not quite the same thing being helped back to a group of 5 riders as it is being helped, you know, getting some sort of measure of assistance back to a large peloton.
He's Esteban going into his radio now. He really wants to know what to do now. They're in a difficult situation. They look very strong, having 5 riders in the front group, but now they're only got 1 rider in this group of 5. Still, Jurgen Rollins has got 1 minute and 15. He looks super strong today. And Debussy, the Belgian champion, having a free ride. So it does very, very much look as if it's a great performance by Lotto Soudal so far today. But we said this about other teams, as we see the valiant fight to get back from Geraint Thomas.
Big challenge now for Geraint Thomas. 120 now, the gap between. Well, I tell you what, Jurgen Rollins is really putting it up to the other. Still got 56.4 kilometers to go. But Geraint Thomas races back up to the other 4, and I think that's just an indication of the sort of savage form he's on at the moment. A pursuiter by trade. Give him a carrot, like, what, 20-30 second gap to close within a few kilometers. Well, he's absolutely the perfect man for the job, especially when he's on form like this. They'll be delighted to see him back as well, I think, in one respect, in as much as he's going to add extra impetus, and it looks like they're going to need it because Rollins is doing a very strong job. And Jalos calling for team assistance, perhaps needs to have a little conversation. What are they going to do now? Luca Paolini rolling through. He's on the front for Katusha. Just on his wheel, the man who's just made it back into the fray after that spectacular tumble into the ditch, Geraint Thomas. Sepp van Mark of Lotto Jumbo in the yellow colours.
This group is not far behind. Just look at the time gaps now, and they've decided to they try to close the gap. See Nicky Terpstra on the attack, trying to go across. So it did look as if in Ethics Quickstep not overly happy. Only have 1 rider there, trying to fire a rider across here, but he's got 48 seconds to make up.
Former Dutch champion Nicky Terpstra, winner of Paris-Roubaix 12 months ago. Got a big rendezvous on the cobble roads in northern France in a couple of weeks' time, but in the meantime, he's got an important rendezvous with the group up front, and he's got to get across to it. So clearly they're not happy to back Stijn Vandenberg for the win. He's not noted as a sprinter. He's not noted as being someone who can close out a classic win, albeit he usually is there in the mix coming up to the final, in or around the final, but never the man to get it across the line. So Ethics Quickstep not satisfied with the composition of that group ahead, and Nicky Terpstra is going to try and ride across to it rather than merely just putting the Ethics Quickstep squad, such as it is, onto the front of that group behind and towing up other riders. It's a big gamble. Will he be able to make it across?
Well, they did put in a bit of an effort before, so trying to fire a rider across, and they'll get it in their ears, the riders in the front, and they'll try and put the pressure on. They do not want Nicky Terpstra to make it up to have 2 Ethics boys. So the team that is showing, I wouldn't say dominance, but showing good tactical sense today is Lotto Soudal. They put Rollins in front. Martin Terlinge was Lotto Jumbo, and they were trying to do exactly what we're doing here. Having Terlinge in front and Sepp van Mark would be able to ride in the wheels. But this team here, Lotto Soudal, have turned it around, put Rollins in front, and it means that Debussy, the Belgian champion, can have a free ride behind. And also they've got André Greipel in the group behind of Esteban.
About 8 kilometers to the next climb. That's the Banneberg. It's the short, sharp shock one, 300 meters. Little ramp up of 20% at the beginning of that. And Rollins is increasing his advantage. Now 141 to the group behind, who are less than 49 seconds between the group of 6 riders and the remains of the peloton. So Rollins, who was, as I said, 7th in E3 a couple of days ago and 11th in Milan-San Remo last week. Clearly on flying form. Is he using up his legs too early? Well, he's doing a great job for his team one way or another. Bit of an ask for him to last out there for another 50 kilometers plus. You get the sense that the impetus has gone out of this group, that they're just rolling through, not really.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult for them when they've got Van den Berg and Boucherie just sitting on the back as passengers. 4 riders now committed. Paolini has already made a big effort, so it does look as if there's an opportunity from what's left of the peloton, so for some riders to try and come across.
Now Rollins looks great on a bike, doesn't he? In that classic pose. Perfect 90-degree angle between his upper arm and his lower arm as he sits on the tops. Puts himself into a place of sustainable suffering. Monty Group Gobert and managed to get a... Is that Ungoval?
Here comes Wilfred Peters up to have a chat with Van den Berg.
Yes, can't get ahead of the group quick enough. So now the group behind. 45 seconds behind the group of 6 ahead.
And we think, we've not seen reports yet, but we think that Ethics Quickstep have got a one rider in between, and that's Nicky Terpstra. Nicky Terpstra trying to make his way forward to this group in front. Can't see him in this group at all.
Yeah, it would be nice to get that information. That would also very much change the dynamics. If Terpstra gets over there, then they'll start riding. Certainly Van den Berg will go in the front at that point.
I think that's why he's decided not to ride, because Terpstra is trying to come across to that group of 6.
So Ethics Quickstep, some interesting and unusual tactics, and so often in these races, because they've been so strong for so long and have such a strong collection of classics riders, that the scrutiny is all that more intense on how they play their tactics.
But this man has to be very careful now. He cannot go too much into the red. Still over 50 kilometres to go. He's on his own, no shelter whatsoever, and in these conditions you can blow big time. So he just has to be very careful and try and measure his effort now.
Jürgen Rollins continuing to increase his advantage. Well,
he's made it across. He's made it across. It looks like Nicky Terpstra has made it across. So a big effort. And now Ethics Quickstep in a very good position now. They put 2 riders now at the front of this race, or near the front.
So this is actually an extra rider who can make a contribution. More important than that, then one of the riders that's in there that's not making contribution will be called back into action, and he'll be on duty. And this could be an interesting moment for Jürgen Rollins as Luca Paolini drags the group along. Terpstra makes the junction.
They'll be happier now to having 2 riders, but the fact that Van den Berg is sat on, he'll have to come to the front now. So Van den Berg has got to do a lot of hard work, and I think Nicky Terpstra will have to help him now. But this is in a better position now for Ethics Quickstep. So we have 7 riders chasing down 1 rider who's at 1 minute and 48 seconds.
So the group of 5 became 6 with the addition of Luca Paolini. 5 again with the crash. Relatively benign one. Relatively, I say. That happened to Geraint Thomas, but he was no harm done. Back in the fray, back up to 6, and now Nicky Terpstra has made it 7 riders up front, including 2 riders from Ethics Quickstep, and Terpstra not too shy about going to the front of the field. Chris Porter is on Twitter, at DQ Sport for myself, at Bryce Smithy, hashtag home of cycling. I would love to see Luca Paolini win. He's always up there working hard. He is always thereabouts. He's around a long time now, the Katusha rider, but he knows exactly where to place himself. And even if the legs aren't always perfect at the back end of a classic, well, he's a tough classics man and really intelligent rider, knows exactly where to be at pretty much every point. A little bit of activity in the group behind.
Yeah, this is Matt Heyman now for Orica. They've got 2 riders in this group, and I said many teams with only 1 rider. So very difficult for them. They're just trying to create a small chasing group now. Still time for any of these riders. If we can get 5 or 6 riders working well together, they can make it back to the front.
A local team, Wanty Group Gobert, have also managed to get 2 riders in there.
It looks like a Mercato and Leukemans for Wanty Group Gobert. Just noticed that also Tinkoff were talking to Sagan.
Memorials to so many different nations around Flanders Fields. And this area is absolutely dotted with with graveyards, cemeteries of all sorts of types. And literally thousands of unmarked graves representing, well, a time that must not be forgotten. That John Beetle says, not many harder man than Geraint Thomas. What a ride to get back on. Yeah, he absolutely flew up there, didn't he? He's on good form, there's no doubt about it. And one would hope for Thomas that he's retaining enough energy for battles to come, because we're still just arriving at the point of this race that you would start to describe as the final on an average Classics day. Look at the way that flag is blowing on the left-hand side. Just as Rowlands goes past that gap in the buildings, the bike is almost whipped from under him. Once he's through this small hamlet, he'll be back into the wind in a big way.
Mark Sargent just giving him a gel, saying it was open, so he could just squeeze it in. He'll need every ounce of energy he can get. 147 in front of 7 riders, including Van Mark, Thomas, Oss, Van den Berg, De Buschere, Paulini and Terpstra, but the gap creeping up ever more to the peloton now.
Peter Kirk pointing out it wasn't that mild a spill for Geraint Thomas. Yes, it was a spectacular crash over the handlebars, but luckily, as Brian said, a relatively soft landing from his point of view. No harm done, but awful to see riders just being literally blown off the road. Inside 50 kilometers to go. 1 minute and 53 seconds is the advantage that our lone leader out front, Jurgen Rowlands, has managed to eke out over this group of, now it has swelled to 7 riders who have now got what looks like a 2-minute advantage on the group behind. So the chase behind from what was the main peloton has disintegrated a little bit lately, as these 7 riders up front chase our lone leader. You're looking at the remains of the main peloton in Gent Wevelgem. We're inside 50 kilometers to go in the one they call the Sprinters Classic, and these riders are in danger of being completely out of it. Peter Sagan, the reigning champion, on the podium the last 3 years in a row, and a very, very frustrated figure. He's the lone Tinkoff Saxo in there. He's got no teammates to help with the chase, and there doesn't seem to be any impetus here, because we've got 7 riders out front of them by over 2 minutes at this point, getting up towards 2.5 minutes advantage to those 7, and then further up the road by another 2 minutes, our lone leader, Jurgen Rowlands of Lotto Soudal. He's been out there since 77 to go, so 30 kilometers on his own at this point, and what a ride he's doing. Still seems full of fight as he hits the next climb. This the Bannerberg, a short, sharp shock. Fans from the Isle of Man have made their way to see how Mark Cavendish is getting on. Well, not getting on terribly well. Caught out with a crash early on, managed to get back on, and then a puncture at just the worst possible moment in the midst of an echelon dogfight up near the coast. And he was dispensed with, jettisoned from the fray at that point, so no luck for Mark Cavendish. Having said that, his Ethics Quick-Step team are still very, very much involved in this. They've got 2 riders in that group of 7 chasing behind. Stijn van den Berg and the reigning champion of Paris-Roubaix, Nicky Terpstra. The Dutchmen have made it into that group of 7, Terpstra having chased across from the remains of the peloton. And now Rowlands has squeezed himself up and over that climb, down the descent, gets first sight of these muddy, muddy roads. He's starting to feel it now, surely, Brian.
You would think so, but he still looks strong enough, holding the gap of 2 minutes, and they are riding behind him, the 7 riders. And, you know, looking at the peloton, that's creeping back now. It was a case of about almost 50 seconds at one point. Nicky Terpstra zipped across the gap, and the only chance for the riders now in the peloton to do anything is for a big attack on the Kemmelberg. Maybe take 6 or 7, possibly 8 riders with you, all committed to try and come back to this group, because they do not look at this point to be riding flat out, because they know they've got Debussy, the Belgian champion, just sitting pretty on the back. He's not done anything at all. He made a big effort to go with this group. So a tough day for everybody, but we're into this strong headwind and nobody wanting to commit themselves 100%. And Rollins has got nobody to worry about apart from himself and obviously the road in front of him.
Plus, they must simply all be quite tired and trying to save last few joules of energy to try and scrimp together resources for battles to come, because still 47 kilometers remaining. Interesting viewpoint on Twitter at DQ Sport for myself. Bryce Smithy, hashtag home of cycling. And Richard M is saying, proving Sagan was a poor signing for Tinkoff Saxo. No support, no team, all round poor fit. It's not really Peter Sagan's fault, is it, that he has no teammates with him? He's done his job and managed to make it into that group. But unfortunately not able to chase it all down on his own.
When you look at that team, I think it's a strong team. Bodnar, Brescio, Kolar, Markov, Tozato, Trusov and Brut. Brut was in the original attack. The group of 7 that went away near the start, and you know, it did look good having a ride on the break and not having to do anything. But you've got to remember, when the race decimated and they cross wins, there's a lot of the riders being blown about, and many of the riders don't like that. It got really dangerous, and all of a sudden he finds himself in that position. Ethics quick step at about 5 riders in front. Then when Vandenberg went away with this group, they fired Nicky Terpstra across, but they're just riding. They're not riding to try and bring back Rollins back at the moment. They're probably waiting for the Kemmelberg, and I think that's where they have to try and do something. They have to try and get rid of the passenger on the back, the Bucherer. They think we might see some attacks on the Kemmelberg, and possibly from this group as well, but it's getting too much now. It's over almost 3.5 minutes now back to this group from the 7 riders in front. Yeah,
5:25 from the front to the main group. Thanks to Mike Evans for pointing it out that Peter Sagan didn't win this race last year. It was John Degenkolb, of course. He's the reigning champion of Gent Wevelgem. Sagan has been on the podium the last 3 years, though. And now just a little bit of activity in that group as Vandenberg making his presence felt on the front. Geraint Thomas playing a watching brief. Daniel Oss, he's been in fine form, hasn't he, since the start of the Classic season. Absolutely stormed down the Poggio. But Cipressa a couple of last week, carrying that form through to Belgium. 2 minutes in arrears. Will they manage to make further inroads? Craig Broughton is calling Nicky Terpstra for the win. Well, there's a long way to go yet before we can... well, you can make a prediction anytime, I suppose, but anything could happen. I wouldn't rule out Geraint Thomas at the moment on the form he's got.
No, not at all. Not at all. We're going to see some action. It's not all over yet. Still have that one rider in front. Lotto Soudal rider Jürgen Rollins has done a terrific job today.
Luca Paolini checking his seams. Obviously very relaxed in there, making sure everything's straight. Might be something slightly different than that. Inside 2 minutes now, so they are starting to... that gap is starting to creep down, bearing in mind they've just come up over the hill. Roland still looks like he's got plenty of fight in there. One senses that surely the strength will diminish at some time soon. It would be a remarkable thing if a man could stay clear for 77 kilometers to win a World Tour race on his own.
I suppose the saving fact is, just looking at the map and the way the wind is blowing now, that the final at least 20 kilometers are pretty much straight into Wevelgem, and it should be pretty much a tailwind at that point. So if you can get to that point with 2 minutes, it still could be doable, but it's been an epic ride by Roland so far.
Yeah, explain why a tailwind is generally to the advantage of the rider who's already made the gap.
Well, if it was a headwind, he would slow right down because of and it would be easier for the 7 riders in front to bring him back, or 6 riders. They've got 1 passenger, because they'd be swapping turns, and they'd be swapping turns against the headwind. With the tailwinds, obviously it's going to benefit the chase and the rider in front, but for Rollins on his own, it's going to benefit him, because everybody knows what it's like with a tailwind and riding into a headwind. When you're on your own, it's somewhat easier to have a tailwind. So he just has to try and get to that point in about just over 20 kilometres time. Still not going to be easy, because this group is not finished yet. I'm pretty sure we're going to see some activity, maybe the next time up the Kemmelberg.
This the group behind, inside 2 minutes now, 1 minute and 53 seconds, and this is a critical phase. Will they start to make further inroads? Group behind, plenty of conversation going on. Lotto Jumbo go to the front. They're not interested in chasing. They've got Sepp van Mark doing a fine job for them up front in that group of 7. So they'll just put the brakes on and block the road.
Well, this was the original attacker, Martin Telingi on the right-hand side. Adrian Petit for Cofidis. Giant Alpecin, I've got 1 rider there on the left-hand side, but so many riders have only got 1 or 2 riders, and nobody really wanting to go to the front of this group. So I think it's all over for these guys if they want to come back to the front of the race, and so the race is going to be over up to the 8 riders out in front. Roland still commanding a lead of just under 2 minutes from Van Mark, Thomas, Os, Vandenberg, Debuchery, Paulini and Terpstra. And the way the tactics are playing at the moment, Debuchery in a very good place for Lotto Soudal. He's got Rollins down the roads, and Debuchery one of the fastest sprinters in that group.
Edwin Squire saying it certainly would be remarkable if Rollins could stay clear for fully 77 kilometres. But let's not forget that Tom Bonin managed to win Paris-Roubaix. It was about 50k, wasn't it, that solo run in for Tom Bonin a few years ago. Tom Bonin, one of the most famous classic riders of all time, one of the preeminent riders of his generation, that's for sure. Unfortunately absent from the classic scene this year, and we wish him well in his recovery from injury. Jürgen Rollins yet to make the big breakthrough in terms of one-day classic success. If he hung on here, it would be a famous win, and wouldn't ever have to buy a beer in Flanders again. 2 minutes now, so he stretched it out again. He's maintaining the tempo, maintaining the advantage, just starting to nod a little bit. Head moving around. The peloton almost 6 minutes in arrears from the lone leader, so almost 4 minutes back from the group behind. I think it's fair to say that the 7 riders chasing the lone leader are the ones that will fight it out for victory in this year's Gent Wevelgem. Apparently nobody beats Zdenek Stybar at Scrabble. That's the ultimate classic riders Scrabble name. Are we allowing proper names into Scrabble now? Luca Paolini has taken his rain jacket off, so conditions significantly improved in terms of wind and rain. Still plenty of wind out there, and as we've seen, when you go past buildings, sudden gusts can just catch the bike, and when they're out into open countryside, as we've seen recently, Geraint Thomas caught out as the wind whipped across his small group. Rollins gets the encouragement, and he's going to need all the encouragement he can get, because this is a big ask for him. Radio goes in, comes back out again.
I think he's struggling with it, and he keeps on trying to put it in his ear sometimes, so you get a bit of tape, and obviously in these conditions it's come out, so it keeps on popping out his ear. He just wants to know the time gap. He's through Kemmel, we've just been through that, the cobblestones there, heading towards the Kemmelberg for the second and last time. Got to go over the Kemmelberg, and then he's got the Monteberg, where he went actually on the attack across to Tillinghast and straight past him he finds himself alone. He just has to try and get to about the just over 22-kilometre mark, and then he should have a bit of a tailwind, and if he has 2 minutes then it's doable.
Question on Twitter earlier about whether the teams all have different frequencies, whether the other teams can listen in. I'm not sure whether they're scrambling the signals, but they certainly would have different frequencies, otherwise things get very confused.
They do have different frequencies, but sometimes in races you start to hear other teams on the same frequency. And there was an occasion where one team were actually blocking all the radio signals in the last hour of a race. I'm not going to say too much about that, but yeah, there is some tactical things.
What team and which race? You can leave it at that.
It always happened with an hour to go.
Wow, what a good time for it to happen. What are the chances? 40 kilometres to go now in Gent Wevelgem. Not much more than an hour of racing left for Jürgen Rollens, although it's a big ask for him and for all the riders out there. They've been battered by wind and rain all afternoon. Can they manage 40 kilometres in the final hour? It would be an impressive performance, albeit they do have a tailwind, and it's worth considering that they are the best riders in world cycling. Now 2 minutes and 9 seconds. Rollens is riding a stormer, and remember, he doesn't have that many more hills to do, because he's now making his way up the penultimate climb of the day. This is where the biggest crowd is going to be, the Kemmelberg. He's absolutely dying on his wheels, isn't he? This is maximum 19% on this climb, and he's feeling every one of those percentage points at the moment. Has to stay in the saddle. Those glistening cobbles mean that out of the saddle there's just no traction whatsoever.
Well, he's getting plenty of encouragement, but we're going to see a reaction now from this group of 7. Somebody has to make a big reaction, and I think maybe Geraint Thomas might be looking at this now.
It's going to come. You can sense it, you can feel it. The riders behind, they've been riding a tempo that's been maintaining the gap to the rider up front, but not been making any inroads in it. And for all that Rollens is an absolutely stunning rider, a stunning talent, and producing a truly epic ride, you feel that the riders behind could have closed this gap a little bit more than they have done latterly. Having said that, they've maintained the gap to the riders behind. The peloton not able to cobble together any sort of a chase, and now more than 4 minutes behind inside the final 40k.
Rollens just has to just maintain a good tempo up here. He doesn't have to ride flat out. A bit of a grimace there. He just has to get over this climb safely down the other side. He's got one small climb yet to come, and he's getting ever so closer to the run into Wevelgem, but we are going to see a big reaction from the 7 behind.
We're waiting. He's waiting. Everybody senses that it's coming. 3 kilometres in total, the Kemmelberg, so it's the longest hill they face. And he'll be delighted to know that he's done it twice. He doesn't have to do it anymore. Monteberg is 1 kilometre in length, average of 12%. Sorry, average of 7.3%, maximum of 12%, and that is reached with 34 kilometres remaining. So once he crests the summit, here he'll have about another 3k to the bottom of the Monteberg. Now they're on the cobbles too, and here it comes, because the group of 7 behind have hit the lower slopes of the Kemmelberg. Stijn Vandenberg on the back of the group. Nicky Terpstra on the front. No, it's Vandenberg is up the front, actually. Terpstra now on the left-hand side for Ethics Quickstep. Realises that he's got to get a little bit further up. On the left-hand side at the front is Daniel Oss. He looks over his right shoulder, he looks over his left and sees that Nicky Terpstra is the one that puts in the dig. Terpstra it is that is racing clear. Has the gap, and who's going to be able to chase it down? Well, Geraint Thomas is next up. Vandenberg looks like he's really suffering, and nobody's able to get on terms with Terpstra. Geraint Thomas, we predicted, would be thereabouts. Van Mark isn't enjoying it. Luca Paolini, he chased across the gap, and now he's really feeling the effects. De Busker's had a free ride and is clinging on manfully to Sepp van Mark. Daniel Oss looks like a beaten docket at the moment. Will he be able to get up to the top in time? It's a 3-kilometre hill, remember. 2 minutes and 9 seconds still, as Thomas manages to winch himself back onto the wheel of Nicky Terpstra. So now the group has become 2.
This is a perfect tandem, Geraint Thomas and Nicky Terpstra. Derbyshire are in trouble a little bit now with Oss, and this is a big effort now by Nicky Terpstra. If Geraint Thomas can hang on, then the 2 riders could possibly go across to Rolands.
Paolini stalls, and he'll do well now to get back to De Buskera. De Buskera in turn is on the wheel of Daniel Oss, and they desperately need to get back as quick as they can because there are 2 Ethics Quick-Step riders up front. Stijn Vandenberg has found some sort of energy in himself. He's managed to get a tow from Sepp van Mark onto the wheel of Geraint Thomas. It's Terpstra that leads Thomas, then Van Mark, and Stijn Vandenberg, 2 Ethics Quick-Step riders of the 4, and will they be able to maintain the gap to the riders behind, because Daniel Oss has the best sprinter of the lot in this group, Jens De Buskera, for company. Still 2 minutes and 7 seconds to Jürgen Rolands up front.
Well, he's coming back. De Buskera was the very important rider here, and if he can make it back to these 4 in front, then it could be game over. Rolands could take this title today if he manages to stay away, but again, it's about De Buskera. If you can get rid of him, then you've got a very workman-like group.
Here they come. Jürgen Rolands through the cavalcade of tractors. Left and right, for all that it's a protest. There's massive, massive support for all the riders in Flanders this afternoon. He's a Belgian. He's 29 years of age, and they're all cheering what is a stunning performance. Regardless of how it turns out, it's been an epic ride from Jürgen Rolands. And that little bit of activity behind has helped them slice a few seconds off the lead, but not a whole lot. And that's a hell of a klaxon sound for Jürgen Rolands. Those shovels make for great grandstands, don't they? What's he got left? Jürgen Rolands, desperate to try and cling on, and look at that update from the GPS suggests there's now only 1.5 minutes, so that big burst of activity on the Kemmelberg has certainly had a big effect, and Daniel Oss looks like he might make it in. De Buskera is back up with the leaders, so the Kemmelberg hasn't proved to be significant in terms of splitting them up. Luca Paolini too is scrabbling to try and get back on terms, so it looks like the Kemmelberg, good old scrap, but not enough in terms of splitting them up. Oh, and Oss has absolutely stood still in the road, so he almost made it back on and then finds himself absolutely shattered in that headwind.
The important rider in that group in front is De Buskera. He can just sit on the back of the other riders in front, and if they come off onto the bigger roads, then he only has to sit there. They had to get rid of him. They haven't done that, as we head back to what's left of the peloton, led by Towns of Top Sport Flanders.
Well, BMC have riders in this group. They're not chasing now, but they'll be devastated to find that Daniel Oss, for all his fantastic form in recent weeks, just hasn't quite got it. And I wonder if he's going to be able to make it back to that group. One more climb to come.
Don't think Oss or Paolini are going to make this.
No, it's certainly not Oss. Paolini, well, you can see the riders becoming ever smaller in the distance. Stijn Vandenberg goes to the front. It was Terpstra that split them up, and now he'll try and save a little bit of energy, try and regroup to do it all again on the final climb of the day, the Monteberg, coming up very shortly.
Sylvain Chavanel leading the what's left of the peloton from Towns. Trenton in third place there.
They're on the bottom of the Kemmelberg. Christian Knaes for Team Sky. Gerald Zielek, and big hopes. Look at Peter Sagan towards the back of the group. Very frustrated figure, as indeed is Arnaud Demar.
Scott Thwaites is hanging in there also.
Well, super ride by Scott Thwaites. For Aragon rider. Andre Greipel. A long day in the saddle for the German. Ultimately, to know
at least he'll be comforted by knowing that he's got two teammates in front. Roland's in the lead, and in that group behind, you've got De Bucheret, the Belgian champion. So Lotto Soudal still looking very pretty.
Liam Ruth pointing out that the Kemmelberg's 530 meters long. I suppose it is at its steepest point. I suppose it depends on where you pick it up, but the graphics here indicating that it's 530 meters long. The Monteberg is 1 kilometer.
Paulini's actually made it back to this group of 5 to make it 6. So the only person missing is Os, just a little behind. De Bucheret is just hanging on here. This is the last climb. He's been a passenger in this group for the last, what, 60 kilometres. He hasn't had to put his nose in the wind because he's got a teammate in front. Nicky Terpstra leading the way from Seth Van Mark. Geraint Thomas still in there. He's already crashed, been on the deck.
Well, he might have found it, he might have had a free ride, but he didn't find the Kemmelberg easy, so clearly not unlimited reserves of energy there for De Bucheret.
All he needed to do was hang in, because if he'd have lost this group and these 4 riders had gone down the roads, I think they would have given absolute 100% to come back to Rollins. And so with 34 kilometres to go, Rollins still looks, he's got a shoe in for the win here. But Os looks as if his legs have gone. He has ridden well today, but he's just starting to tire now.
He's a disconsolate figure now, isn't he, Daniel Os? What a great ride, what a great week it's been for him. Strong performance. Unfortunately, his team leader Greg van Avermaet still feeling the effects of that very, very heavy impact with the ground in E3. And is this Chavanel? Sylvain Chavanel of the a frustrated figure, has decided to forge on alone. Surely a futile quest at this point. The Frenchman never knows when to say die, and he's heading out alone for a 33, or at least a little bit longer, 34, 35 kilometer time trial. Another man on a time trial, an epic time trial. Jürgen Rollins, we almost forgot about him. He's still out there. 1 minute and 12 seconds his advantage over the group of 5 behind. A group of 6 behind now, isn't it? With Paolini back in. And Rollins still hanging on. It'll be interesting to see what the situation is at the top of the Monteberg. Surely Rollins can't hang on to ahead of the combined forces of these riders behind. 2 Ethics Quick-Step riders riding. Geraint Thomas is riding. Van Mark is riding. Jens De Bucheret has got a free pass. Paolini, well, I wonder how much energy he's got to give.
Never say die attitude. Look at Paolini. Committed to his team as well when he has to ride for Christophe, as we've seen in the Milan San Remo. Os has still got an opportunity of making it back, but it just goes to show you that although Van den Berg's to the front, you got a feeling they're not committing 100%.
Ethics Quick-Step have the numbers in this group. If they do manage to tow back Rollins, how do they play it?
I can only think now they have to get rid of De Bucheret. Well, De Bucheret is there. He's getting, even if they take back Rollins, De Bucheret could possibly win the sprints. So they're pretty much in 2 minds now. What they do is commit themselves with De Bucheret sat on and bring Rollins back, and then they're in with an opportunity to win. You just have to block out your mind that De Bucheret is there, and they have to do it now. They have to do it quickly, because then they can start attacking with 2 riders in front. They can start attacking and try and win. Because I'm pretty sure that if they do catch Rollins, he's going to be absolutely insane Scotland gubbed. He's not going to have a lot of energy left, so now's the time to do it. If you can bring him back, it means that De Bucheret will have possibly 20 kilometres to try and control things. He is the fresher man, but looking at his facial expressions and the way he rode to Kemmelberg, he's starting to feel it as well. So it's now or never. They have to bring Rollins back and then try and fight out the win. I do feel it's going to come down to a solo performance today.
Daniel Oss is still chasing. Let's not rule him out. He's still trying, and that enormous dig by Stijn Vandenberg there won't have done him any good in his efforts to try and get back on terms. Oss not enjoying the hill, but still goes extremely quickly on the flat road. Similar experience for Vandenberg. Amazing dig, and now the gap is inside a minute for the first time in a long time, and there are still 31.5 kilometers remaining for Jürgen Roelands, starting to drape the hands over the bars. He must be feeling it at this point. He's nodding the head every few moments. His neck muscles must be absolutely shot at this stage, not to mention his leg muscles.
Yeah, no matter what the outcome, he's put a super ride in. Cannot think of a time back where somebody's put in a ride like this. It's been absolutely first class, but the gap is creeping down, 53 seconds. But you've got to remember, he is tired. He's been out there since about 70, just over 70 k's to go. But the other riders behind are tired, so if he can just try and hang on here, he'll be turning direction fairly soon, which will turn into more of a tailwind, and that might help him a little bit. But back to the chase behind. Geraint Thomas, Terpstra, Van Mark, Van den Berg, De Busscher has been sat on. Paulini's not really contributing too much. Oss still trying to make it 7 again.
Going to be a close run thing. Sylvain Chavanel is still chasing behind. Will he be able to hang on? Sylvain Chavanel chasing the group of 7 riders ahead of him, and the group in front is of 1. He's on the road to Wevelgem, but will he be able to hang on? 28 kilometers remaining for Jürgen Roelands. He's been out there since about 77 kilometers to go. A futile attack, it appeared at that moment. Foolhardy, but he's still managing to hold off this group. Just inside 50 seconds his advantage over this group of 6 riders behind. Daniel Oss hasn't managed to get back to them. There are 2 Edix Quick-Step riders there. We're having a little bit of a conversation, because Nicky Terpstra and Stijn Vandenberg, you feel sure that the attacks are going to kick off very shortly. They're the ones with the numerical strength in this group. And the big threat, wearing the Belgian national champions tricolour colours there, is Jens De Busscher, Roland's Lotto Soudal teammate. De Busscher starting to roll towards the front now. Interesting to...
He's just following the wheel, and get around to saying to him, look, get to the back, shake of the head. He's just following the wheel, as you do. When you've got a teammate in front, you try and disrupt the chase, and you do it in a professional manner. If he lets the gap go and lets people in front of him, but if someone wants to get behind, everybody's getting tired in the group behind. No more tired than this man here, still 47 seconds. If he can just get to as close to the 20 k's to get that tailwind, and hopefully the negative riding behind could possibly help him. You can just see the speed is up ever so slightly. It's kind of head cross at this, tail cross at this moment. So you can just see he's starting to move over the ground a little bit quicker now, but the gap coming down ever so slowly.
Dave Elson's asking on Twitter, at DQ Sport, hashtag home cycling, why don't one of the Ethics guys not take De Busscher out the back, make him work to get back on? It's a dangerous game to play, isn't it?
At this moment it is. They can do that, and they have to get rid of De Busscher, and it's not the case. So
attacking rather than...
They have to bring back, they have to do this, they have to bring back Roelands first. Once they bring back Roelands, then they can start to play the tactical game. But I think Roelands will be really tired to go with any of the accelerations. It will all be left to De Busscher, and again he's just following the wheel through and trying to upset the riders, because when you get deep into a race like this and tiredness starts to set in, and he's doing what anybody would do for his teammate in front. Every second is going to count in this running.
He's forcing Geraint Thomas to ride that little bit further to go up and over and through. And that's likely to make his fellow breakaway companions just a little bit cranky.
Thing is, never right off look at Paulini. He's a fighter. He came across the gap, and he's probably he is the oldest rider in here, but he's got very much a lot of experience. So never write him off.
39 seconds, so it is creeping down, and you feel that Jürgen Rollins, his minutes, his kilometers out front are numbered at this point. Surely the man from Asse in Belgium can't hang on for the remaining 25 kilometers. As we have said, he has got the best of the wind behind him, and that's to his advantage in the closing kilometers, but he must be very, very tired at this point. Well, the motorbikes have been cleared out. He gets further indication of the gap, such as it is. Been plenty of motorbikes for company for Rollins. Hasn't done him any harm, that's for sure. Now inching up around and just hovering around the 40 seconds mark. Oh, just stretching the legs a bit, so a bit of cramp might be creeping in there. Over 200 kilometers in the legs at this point. Over 215 kilometers in the legs. More is to the point. 134 Grassi saying, does Geraint do too much work? Might have said that on Friday, I think, and he did win, so definitely not on that occasion. Today, I think it's been share and share alike of those riders with a reason to work.
It is, he has to, right? He's on good form. If he wants to try and win this today, he's in with another good chance. He's up against some very strong riders, and obviously slightly outnumbered, but he's still in it, and he has to ride if he feels good. And they have to bring back Rollins. Once they've brought back Rollins, then the tactical ploys will start to happen.
Now this is the in Flanders Fields Museum in Ypres. Ypres, however it is pronounced. A scene of so much of the really grim fighting in World War I. We're deep into West Flanders country here. Of a population, and plenty of them out in the wind and the rain to cheer on Jürgen Rollins towards victory. Can he hang on? 35 seconds his advantage. Surely it's not enough. Just too much strength behind. Third largest city in Flanders, this, after Gent and Bruges. Famous in the textile industry, as so many of the towns around here were. The Axis sweep across Germany in World War I, of course, was centered on the Battle of Ypres. Now just over half a minute. They'll start to see the evidence of Jürgen Rollins just ahead of them. It's been a long time since they saw him in this race. Well, Mark Vallis said, we've seen some great racing so far this season, and this is superb. Respect for them all. It is a superb race, isn't it? It is a tough race. Tough man to take your arm warmers off in Belgium today, but Seth Van Mark's feeling pretty hot. Thank you very much. Daniel Oss still fighting hard to get back into contention. I don't think it's going to happen for him. And now through the twists and turns, a few seconds gained by Rollins. Is it too much to believe it's possible at this point, Brian?
I'm hoping it's possible, because it's been a terrific ride. 34 seconds it was, with 25 kilometers to go, 41 seconds. He could have done without going through Ypres and the twists and turns and having to get out the saddle and accelerate again. So it's still hanging in the balance. It's the riders behind really need to still commit themselves. You can still see they're tired. They've got a passenger that'll be in the back of their minds, and you know, he's getting a free ride. But the sooner they can get Roland's back, the harder it will be for the Belgian champion to win this race today. There will be a lot of tactical ploy still to play out.
So how does Geraint Thomas play it? Should he think about attacking now?
They can't. They have to get Roland's back first. Once they get Roland's back, then they can start to mess around and start to finesse. But they have to get him back first.
Look at the wind blowing the trees and blowing the Lion of Flanders, and that's the tailwind that he needs if he's to have any chance of hanging on. He needs a tailwind right now. At the moment, he has it. So just over 20 kilometers remaining in Gent Wevelgem of 2015. It's been an epic day in the saddle for Jürgen Roelandts and for everyone else indeed who signed on this morning, even those who haven't made it all the way around at this point. Jürgen Roelandts of Lotto Soudal, oh, he's really feeling it. Feeling the cramps, every opportunity to coast into a corner is some margin of relief, but he knows he's got to get back on the pedals. Has to maintain the focus as well. So easy to make a little error on these greasy conditions. It's the most difficult of conditions, of course. Not exactly sure what level of grip you have. And the attacks, it looks like they've kicked off. Van den Berg has kicked it off. Luca Paolini put into a little bit of difficulty. De Buskere is alive to the danger. Terpstra is going to let a little gap go to Geraint Thomas up front. Thomas immediately responds. He knows that he has to. De Buskere too needs to respond. Terpstra, well, he'll just watch this one. And indeed, if he's not careful, he's going to be put out the back of it. He provides the little bit of a lot of shelter indeed for Luca Paolini, but Terpstra having to make an effort to get back onto the back of this group, and it looks like Geraint Thomas has managed to drag them back over.
But De Buskere is still there, so Geraint swings over. He's not going to get any help from De Buskere. Just puts him again in the gutter. So they just asked the question there, but Stijn van den Berg is putting in a big turn now.
Oh, he goes again, and a few meters gap open up between himself and Geraint Thomas. And there is not a single rider in that group that is not really feeling this, because it's been an absolute battering for every one of these riders. Geraint Thomas winches himself back on. De Buskere is safely in there. Terpstra manages to make the junction after putting himself in a little bit of danger. Luca Paolini clearly doesn't have a lot of strength, but has all the smarts necessary to get in there. If they stall a lot at the back end of this, Paolini will try his luck. The gap now to Roelandts inside 18 seconds. Surely, I think he's out on his feet at this stage.
That was a huge turn there for Van den Berg. Geraint rides through, but that was the perfect time if you had the legs to go on the counter-attack, because they can see Roelandts in front. So for Terpstra, that was the perfect time to try and hit them, because everybody's in their hands and knees.
The riders spread wide across the road, looking at each other. Where's the next attack coming from? It's a little bit of relief for Roelandts. And now they go again. Van den Berg once more continues the softening up process.
He does look super strong. He's put a lot of big efforts in today. Sepp van Marco is with him. De Buskere just hanging in there, hanging off the left-hand side of his bike, trying to get as much shelter as possible.
Van den Berg's attacking from the front of the group. Would he not have been better advised, if he's going to go next, just to roll to the back of the group? They'd all be looking for it and waiting, but he might just get that extra pedal revolution advantage, and Terpstra's gone. Terpstra's cracked in a big way. Has he punctured?
Cramp.
Yeah. Is it cramp or is it a puncture? Looks like we could have a mechanical issue for Nicky Terpstra. And this has had a massive impact on the tactical considerations. Inside 20 kilometers to go. Terpstra, well, they've gone for a bike, and it's not coming off the roof just quick enough. And this is surely it for Nicky Terpstra. Frustration for the Dutchman.
Drama continues in this race.
Will he be able to get back in? It's going to be a huge effort if he does get back in, and judging by the difficulty he had in responding to Van den Berg's last attack, well, you'd say it's going to be a difficult one for him. So Terpstra's out of it. Roelandts has been towed back by the last little bit of activity, as Luca Paolini and Geraint Thomas looking to eliminate Nicky Terpstra from affairs. Stijn Berg now gets a free ride for a little while. And there they are. They've mopped him up. What a great effort.
You feel sorry for him now.
I'll doff your cap. After a fantastic performance by Jürgen Roelandts, it now means that we have 2 Lotto Soudals in there, but surely Jürgen Roelandts doesn't have much in the way of legs to contribute to the effort for Jens de Buskera. So de Buskera now expected to do a turn, and he does, and Nicky Terpstra finds that the Ethics Quick-Step car is just ahead of him.
They're probably getting the shouts from the referee car now, asking him to come in front. So a little help from the team car, and you know, why not? He punctured from the group, and he's only going back to this, but it obviously could affect the outcome of this race. So that's why the commissaires have been pretty hot in the return of Terpstra. Yeah,
he hasn't taken too much advantage from the cars, but I'll tell you what, he is getting back there, and if they don't want to include the Paris-Roubaix champion in their tactical considerations, someone would want to attack right about now. Thomas has a look at de Buskera, says, "You fancy a go?" And he says, "No way. I'm going waiting for the finish." So less than 17 kilometers to go, and Nicky Terpstra makes it back to the group.
He's going to go straight over the top by the looks of this here, Declan.
It would certainly be the right move, because nobody wants to bring the man on the front, Jens de Buskera, all the way to the line. Geraint Thomas rolls to the front. It's between these 7 riders.
He's looking, here he goes.
Here comes Terpstra. They've all been alive to it. Luca Paolini most alive, and immediately responds.
No reaction from de Buskera. Geraint Thomas takes it up.
So now Nicky Terpstra, the expected, long-anticipated attack, immediately gets back to the group and immediately draws clear. And who does he bring with it? Well, perhaps the rider that was suffering the most in the break for much of the last 20 or 30k. Luca Paolini tucked into the slipstream with 16 kilometers remaining, and Terpstra is feeling the pain, but he's, well, at the moment, drawing clear of the Geraint Thomas-led group. Has Thomas got what it takes to winch himself back into contention? De Buskera is happy to watch him. Lotto Soudal have 2 riders, one of them surely a beaten docket at this moment after such a long effort. De Buskera looks and asks for one last effort from Roelandts. Does he have it to get back with Terpstra? I really would wonder if he does. He's certainly willing, but has he got the legs to do it? Paolini giving Terpstra a turn now, as he knows he must do. Ethics Quick-Step in pole position here because of these 2. You would anticipate that Nicky Terpstra is slightly stronger, and Terpstra, I don't think there is a single rider of the 7 riders that we're watching on a screen now is really feeling particularly strong, Brian.
No, they're all on the hands and knees, and it's been played out right in front of us. It's been a terrific race today. The 77th edition of Gent Wevelgem. It's not over yet. Geraint Thomas is still fighting. He's got de Buskera there. But Roelandts is gone. But if you turn the clock back to 2013, when Paolini went away with Stijn van den Berg in the Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, and Paolini won that. So again, it's not the person you want to really go with and take Paolini to the line. So de Buskera comes through. Geraint Thomas is still in there. Stijn van den Berg, Van Marks, they're still hanging in there. But Terpstra has got a battler with him, and Paolini could do the dirty on them again and take this win.
Well, it's 4 riders chasing 2. Roelandts looked like he was out of it. There's a little bit of a stall behind, and Geraint Thomas goes again. He knows he's got to try and shift those other riders. He's got to eliminate the man at the back of this group here, Jens de Buskera. He's got a couple of meters of daylight on Stijn van den Berg. Van den Berg desperate to try and get back into the wheel of the Skyman, and just freewheels for a couple of moments and grimaces his way back onto the wheel of the Skyman. Meanwhile, up front, Nicky Terpstra and Luca Paolini working well together, working as well as they possibly can. And now Van den Berg's starting to ride, it would appear.
Looks as if Van Mark has lost the wheel now. So Geraint Thomas towing up Van den Berg now. De Buskera on his last leg, so is Van Mark. So again, it's going to be very difficult. Geraint Thomas is going to get no help whatsoever from Van den Berg. So this race is in pieces. It's got 2, then 2, then 2. Then the man of the day, Roelandts, just been dropped.
It's a bunch of 2-up time trial pursuits out there now, and I did for a moment think that Stijn van den Berg had gone through. He most certainly did not. Flick of the elbow from Sepp van Mark, who's absolutely out on his feet, as Brian says. De Buskera has been eliminated from the equation, or has he? He'll continue to chase any stall from the 4 riders in front, and he'll be right back into contention. So they know they have to keep riding. Geraint Thomas running a little bit wide on that roundabout, but he's still managing to close the gap. Paolini and Terpstra not making any further inroads, and I think it looks like Geraint Thomas is going to bring Stijn Vandenberg back into contention.
Just put him in the gutter. Just put Stijn Vandenberg in the gutter, but it does look as if the big pressure on Lotto Soudal now with De Buskera. He's been sat on the wheels, but in these conditions, sat on the wheels, you still have to make a big effort. So it's still Terpstra from Paolini. Geraint Thomas is just about cracking Vandenberg. If he can get up there, get his breath and try and go again, he could do the double here.
Oh, Vandenberg could well be out of it here if Thomas can get up there in time and then go again. But it's a big ask, that, isn't it? Because this is an absolutely monstrous effort from Geraint Thomas. He's flying today, and Etixx Quickstep have the numbers, but only if Stijn Vandenberg can get back to them. Luca Paolini looks like he's the lesser of the 2 partners in terms of the contributing effort, and Geraint Thomas gets back in there. What a great effort from him.
Super effort, but again, he can't hang about. And if Nicky Terpstra looks back, I'm afraid that he may just sit up and wait for Vandenberg to come back to the front.
Geraint Thomas suggests that maybe Nicky Terpstra might want to make some contribution of his own. He'll just wait a little moment. Vandenberg's coming back to them. The key moment here. Paolini is giving all that he can to keep Stijn Vandenberg out of it. Puts a little bit of daylight between himself
He's just waiting, he's playing. He doesn't want to go on his own. Paolini doesn't want to go on his own. It's still a long way to go, 11.4 kilometres. He knows he's got the sprint to win this edition. Terpstra, I don't think he'll do any turns because Vandenberg is just behind. He'll want Vandenberg to come back up. So this looks as if it's going to be 4 very soon. But Geraint doesn't want Vandenberg to come up. So he has to keep on pushing on, so very tactical at the moment, still anybody's race.
And Thomas is calling for assistance from Luca Paolini. He says, you've got to ride now. Paolini knows that he does, goes to the front, but is his effort equal to or better than that of Stijn Vandenberg? It looks as if that's not the case, because Paolini rolls off the front, and that little stall means that Vandenberg is back on and back in contention. 10 kilometres remaining in an enthralling Gent Wevelgem. The Sprinters Classic, not one for the sprinters, but will it come down to a sprint?
Van Mark and De Buskera still in the distance, probably 15-20 seconds down. You'd think that Lotto Soudal thought they were in a very good position going into the last 25 kilometres, but unfortunately for them, De Buskera hadn't got the legs when Rolands has been caught. So we're down to 2 Etixx riders in front, Terpstra and Vandenberg, together with the man on form, Geraint Thomas, who won E3, Harelbeke, just a couple of days ago, and also the very intelligent riding of Luca Paolini for Katusha.
Well, De Buskera and Van Mark can sense that they're stalling a little bit up front. They haven't got time to finesse. Inside 10 kilometres to go, and they're desperate to get back into contention. Van Mark has an ally for once in De Buskera. A man that, well, he doesn't really want to bring back up there, but he knows he needs his legs if he's got to get back up there. Paolini's flicking the elbows all over the place. He's the big danger in the sprint if it remains a sprint of 4 riders. Could well be a sprint of 6. I'll tell you what, we're going on about De Buskera's sprinting ability, but he's made such huge efforts to stay in contention here.
The thing is, sprinting in these conditions, when they've been riding hard all day after 240 kilometres, it's not easy at all.
It's a different thing altogether.
Different thing. It's going to be who's got the strength in the end. It does look as if Paolini looks exceptionally strong today. Okay, he's been found missing in parts, but he came across to the group. He looks strong there, and he's been using his craft, his experience, to put him in a real good position to win this race today.
Well, De Buskera's out of it at the moment. Do Etixx Quickstep resume their attacking ploy, or do they put a rider on the front to drill it in a big way? I think all 4 of them are going to have to ride. Geraint Thomas goes through. Bottles being dispensed with. Terpstra, a gulp and then a gulp of air. Vandenberg, straight arms there. No strength left in the legs, not much strength left up her body either. Van Mark is going to tow de Buskera, and he's not towing him back up. Both of them are sharing the effort.
They're all over their bikes now. They're just making big efforts. How much effort will they have left? The final 8 kilometres. But it's been a good tag team for the two Belgians to come back to make it 6. Okay, there's 20-30 metres to go, but it does look as if they'll make it back to make 6 in front of the race.
Oh, it's tantalising, the gap now, isn't it? It looks as if de Buskera is going to make it. And Van Mark alongside him. Will there be an attack just as the junction is made? And if so, by whom? Geraint Thomas has to get away from this group. You feel that he knows it. 3K out was seemed like a good number for him on Friday.
Yeah, it was just over 4K. He went with the E3 Harelbecker and held them off, but it's been a very savage day today, and it's going to come down to who's got enough left in the legs. And Van den Berg has got a problem now.
As he hit technical difficulties, well, Nicky Terpstra has to stop to get a bike. Well, there won't be too many spare bikes Van den Berg's size, and you wouldn't have thought Van den Berg's bike is going to be on the outside of the car either, so I think he's going to have to get a wheel, and it looks as if Stijn Van den Berg so close to the finish. And he's still riding. Is it a punctured wheel? Just struggling to see. Is he stuck in gear? No obvious clues there. He's with the Ethics Quick Step car. 7 kilometres remaining.
And he's back.
He's straight back up there.
Go to the left and go on the attack.
Well, perhaps he went back for a little bit of instruction. We know his radio hasn't been working that well. Well, he goes, takes the road less travelled through that roundabout, emerges right alongside Luca Paolini, and then goes again with one of his trademark attack from the front. He'll never catch them out that way. Rolls off the throttle. A brief respite for the riders as the finessing begins. 6 riders left in this one. Daniel Oss out of it at this point.
You just look at all the faces. They know they've been in a bike race today. Still not over. 6.7 kilometres to go to the finish. Getting very tactical now with 2 riders in this front group. You think that Ethics Quickstep would want to try, as you see Wilfred Peters just on the radio, want to try and give them some encouragement to start the old 1-2. Start attacking them. You see Nicky Terpstra on the left. He's trying to get to the back of the group to try and surprise them. Geraint Thomas knows what he's trying to do. De Buskera has been sat on the wheels. Paolini decides to go on the left. He's not one to wait for a sprint now. Just test them out. 3 wheels, still 6.3.
Little tester attack, hoping someone else would be tempted into an immediate response. I tell you what, a little bit this track stand stuff, and Jürgen Rollins will come back into it.
Watch Terpstra again. He's managed to put himself at the back of the group now.
And now Paolini has found himself with a little bit of a gap and has been tempted into committing to it. It's Geraint Thomas once more that feels the responsibility of closing them down.
A look behind by Van den Berg, waiting to see where Terpstra is. Terpstra has to go now.
It would make sense to go over the top of that one and make it the Terpstra-Paolini duo up front once more. Paolini has a very significant gap now. 5.5 kilometres remaining.
Too much negative riding behind, so Paolini decides it's time to go. He doesn't want to come to the finish with de Buskera, so he's decided to go. Ethics need to do something here. Terpstra is in the prime place to go over the top.
And here it comes. Terpstra finally makes the move. Geraint Thomas is alive to the danger. And they all managed to slot in. Stijn Van den Berg with significantly less facility than the others, and Terpstra realizes that he hasn't managed to get any daylight and immediately packs that one in, all to the advantage of Luca Paolini.
I'll tell you what, Ethics Quickstep are not in a very good way at the moment, having 2 riders in this group behind. They have to try and do something. Geraint Thomas is keeping a minute. It's coming close to 5 kilometres to go. Ethics Quickstep, if they want to win this race, have to do something. De Buskera is there. The Belgian champion Van Mark has been struggling ever so slightly. Geraint Thomas, if he wants to try and win this, has to try what he did in E3 and try and distance the others. 9 seconds now to look at Paolini.
Oh, it's an amazing game of cat and mouse. I tell you what, that's some serious chess they're playing, because Luca Paolini is 1,000% committed to this one as Vandenberg goes once more. So they're working the old 1-2. De Buskere feeling the pain as he scrabbles back onto Geraint Thomas's wheel. But as Vandenberg looks behind, he sees that Sepp van Mark is right with him. All the time, Luca Paolini piling the power such as these got left onto the pedals. Total consistency of effort. It's stop-start behind him. And I think Paolini's gone. This is very, very dangerous.
That's it, they've thrown it away now. Ethics Quick-Step having two in front. He just said to Vandenberg, you have to go now. But they have got a sprinter behind, and off he goes.
Vandenberg goes again. Van Mark struggles to make the juncture. And Geraint Thomas isn't enjoying this much either, because a few bike lengths between himself and Van Mark. De Buskere next up, Terpstra getting the free ride.
Well, looks as if in the 77th edition of Gent Wevelgem that experience is going to prevail here. Ethics Quick-Step had 5 riders in the front group, but Paolini goes on the attack. He must have about 15-20 seconds now.
Here comes Terpstra. He got a little bit of respite before he made that one. Geraint Thomas immediately responds. And that could be significant, because there's still 3.5 kilometers to go. And Paolini, I'd love to know what the gap is. He's 38 years of age. He's been and done absolutely everything in cycling. He's been with Katusha since 2011, Aqua Saponi before that, Liquigas with the Quick-Step squad for a while as well.
He's been around a long, long time. Only just 14 wins he's named, but he's in a great position now with 3 kilometers to go to take out his 15th pro career win.
Yeah, he's had stage wins in Giro d'Italia, and it's worth pointing out, as indeed you did a little earlier, Brian, he's won the Omloop Het Nussblad back in 2013. And another significant win in Flanders. It's a tailwind at the moment, as you can see, indicated by the flags. Van Mark is out of it at this point. Terpstra, with Geraint Thomas for company, is chasing our lone leader, Luca Paolini. Behind them, Jens de Buskere and Sten Vandenberg. Paolini looking only in one direction at the moment. He's right down the bottom of the block, dragging around the biggest gear he can possibly sustain. Just 2 kilometers remaining for Paolini. Can he hang on? He's out of sight of Sepp van Mark. Van Mark just focusing all his energies on getting back to de Buskere and Stijn Vandenberg. And de Buskere is going to have to do it alone if he's getting back to Terpstra and Thomas.
53.11 he's in at the moment, and inside the last 2 kilometers, a 240-kilometer race. Really tough conditions. You can just see him down the road. He's got about 18 seconds now. You've now got Terpstra and Thomas. I don't think they're going to bring him back. I think we're going to see probably the oldest winner of Gent Wevelgem.
He's got to be up there. 38. He's one of the oldest riders in the race. Pataki, the oldest to sign on this morning, but Luca Paolini has been around a long time. Has tasted victory champagne on many occasions. He sees the kite, sees that it's fluttering in the breeze with the tailwind, and steals a little look over his left shoulder as if to say, what sort of a gap have I got? Not believing any information he's getting from his team car. If indeed he's getting any information at this point. And it's all over, surely. Geraint Thomas and Nicky Terpstra are not going to get back to this man now. Sten Vandenberg looks to jump Jens de Buskere to see can he race back up to Thomas. And de Buskere is a beaten docket, there's no doubt about it. So Sten Vandenberg, an attempt to close the gap back up to his teammate, but that will be in a race for minor positions. Ethics Quick-Step miss out again on a big win, because Luca Paolini has jumped them all. He's played his cards to absolute perfection. Not the strongest rider in the group, but one of the strongest, and knew exactly when to make his effort. It's an absolutely brilliant win after one of the most stunning classics we've seen in recent years. It's been a tough day, and he is thumbs up to everyone in Flanders. cheers, not least his breakaway companions, as he gets his hand in the air and says, yes, I am the winner of Gent Wevelgem for 2015. Chasing behind, it's a great second place, but runner-up slot for Nicky Terpstra, and first and third 2 days apart for Geraint Thomas and Vandenberg. Shakes his head. Unfortunately, his team not capable of getting a win. Jens de Buskere, great effort, but unfortunately not quite able to be equal to that one. And Luca Paolini certainly did use his head, which I think might have been what he meant with that gesture as he approached the finish line. Disappointment once more for Sepp van Mark, but he has made a great contribution to some wonderful entertainment this afternoon. Luca Paolini, your victor of Gent Wevelgem.
Yeah, we go to the goal. Directly the goal.
And that was pretty much the perfect way to play it, Brian.
He pointed to his head, and that's what we were saying, the most experienced rider. And, you know, he watched distance a couple of times, but really used his experience, came back, went at the right time, just when they were finessing, looking at each other. I think that there'll be words in the Ethics Quick Step camp again. But this man here, 38 years old, been around a long time, and wins his 15th career win. But this is the other man of the day, Jürgen Rollins. What a terrific performance he has put in, and chapeau to him.
Yeah, he can be very proud of what has been a great effort. Animated this race with his attack with 77 kilometers remaining and hanging on for a great result. Significant haul of World Tour points. And a good result to add to his Palmares. Not the victory that he might have hoped for, and unfortunately Jens de Buskere not quite able to hang on there to use his sprint. But there's a big, big cheer for Rollins.
He only came up 151 short.
He manages to smile. He's absolutely shattered. Daniel Oss must be out there somewhere. I wonder if he's managed to hang on clear of the remains of the main bunch, which will be touring in some minutes from now. Let's get another look at the finish line. The moment when Luca Paolini realizes that it's all worked out absolutely perfectly. Two, as if to indicate his this victory, pairing with his Omloop Het Nussblad success from 2013. Two great victories in Flanders.
Stand by met de winnaar.
Super sterke Jürgen Rollins. Heel de koers gezien en beter dat hij goed kan afzetten.
Wow. He never did get a chance to take off those leg warmers, did he?
He never had the time. He was always chasing or going on the attack. I don't think he can quite believe it, but just using his racecraft and using his head, it worked out. I don't think he could quite believe it that when he went away that one of the Ethics Quick Step riders didn't go with him. I don't know what they were playing it, Vandenberg and Terpstra, but they weren't singing off the same hymn sheet.
Once again, the spotlight will be on Ethics Quick Step's tactical playing. Of course, everything they thought about today would have been about the sprint for Mark Cavendish, wasn't to be.
Ma è stata una giornata molto difficile. Ho fatto 2 cadute, per 2 volte caduta e cambiato bici, però conoscevo il percorso e sapevo dove stare quando era il momento di stare davanti, e dopo la fortuna nel finale mi ha assistito.
Questa corsa non era normale con il vento e tutte le altre cose.
No, era impressionante. A un certo punto non sapevamo che noi se continuare, però siamo al nord e qui è il vero ciclismo, quindi sono rimasti penso davanti i migliori corridori con più gamba e sono contento di aver vinto questa edizione che è stata segnata dal vento e dal freddo.
Grande gruppo al fine, come l'hai fatto distaccare gli altri?
Ma forse non ero il più forte, però ho provato a giocare la mia carta, che qualcuno si guardava per la volata sicuro, e io ho dato tutto in 5 km quello che avevo, ho preso un piccolo gap e sono arrivato con buon margine.
Possiamo dire che questa vittoria è la più importante della tua carriera?
Sì, penso inaspettatamente, ma penso di sì, sicuramente.
Giro delle Fiandre?
Nel Giro delle Fiandre ritornerò al mio posto a aiutare Alexander Cristo e vediamo lui come starà domenica. Se non starà bene lui magari potrò provare anch'io qualcosa.
Complimenti, complimenti, grazie.
The greatest victory of his career, says Luca Paolini. And he's happy to return to domestic duties in Tour of Flanders next week, from what I could make out there, in service of Alexander Kristoff. Kristoff not quite equal to the intense winds that really shatter things to bits, and Paolini making reference to that in his comments, from what I could make out. The fact that the winds really did cut them up today. And it was noticeable he was the only guy in the group that was able to take a drink while they were being blown all over the road. Disappointment for Geraint Thomas. Disappointment too for Nicky Terpstra, who sprints to runner-up spot ahead of the Welshman. Superb effort from Geraint Thomas, who'll look forward, I think, to Flanders next week. I'll be watching him, that's for sure. Seemed very, very comfortable, in as much as anyone was comfortable in those conditions this afternoon. Daniel Oss has made his way in. Last remaining member of that breakaway group has finally made it across the line and is worthy of mention, I think. Interesting that Paolini says he'll be working for Kristoff again next week in Flanders. Kristoff not quite able to do it. And the camera, not surprisingly, picking out Jürgen Roelandts for a special tribute. Pain etched on his face. There's not one of those riders out there that hasn't aged about 10 years, I think. And it's all been worth it. I wonder is Roelandts thinking it was all worth it right now, just this moment. Now, it's got to be a proud moment for him. He really made this race a great one. And now the group finally makes its way in, 6 minutes and 45 seconds in arrears. Is that Kristoff to the front of affairs? He'll perhaps have heard already. Sagan it is, Peter Sagan, that's trying to get round him, but Kristoff's going to hang on to win the bunch gallop for the minor placings. True professionals sprinting it out for the minor placings, and indeed there might be a few World Tour points on offer there, which is always worthy of consideration. Kristoff, Sagan and the rest minor players at the end of what's been an absolute epic, and it does tee us up nicely for Tour de Flanders next week, Brian.
Yeah, we've seen 3 races in the last few days. Dwardor Flanders split to pieces with the weather. E3, Harelbeke and better, but it's been three hard races.
There's confirmation of the results. Luca Paolini takes a famous victory in Wevelgem ahead of Nicky Terpstra and Geraint Thomas. Stijn Vandenberg makes it 2 Edix quick steps in the top 4, but without the top spot. De Buskere, Van Mark and Jürgen Roelandts make it 4 Belgians from 4th to 7th. Daniel Oss is the remaining member of the breakaway group in 8th place, with Kristoff mopping up the and Sagan mopping up the final placings in the top 10. Amazing, 4 Belgians from 4th to 7th out of 4 Belgians of 8 riders up front all day. And going forward towards the classics next week, certainly Luca Paolini and Alexander Kristoff look to be in good form, but Geraint Thomas will be watched, won't he?
This is the women's race. It was held earlier.
And of course the women's Gent Wevelgem has been held since 2011. First edition won, of course, by Lizzie Armitstead a couple of years ago. Just waiting for the full confirmation of results in the women's race.
Dank u wel. Zal ik jullie aanpakken? Ho. Ja, oh.
Great to see that the women's race is run on the same day. I think there is something that there is increasingly happening with the big monument events, the big World Tour events.
Hier gaan opvolgen eerst en vooral de huldiging na afloop van de wedstrijd bij de dames. Nadien de huldiging van de wedstrijd bij de heren. De dames hebben ook eveneens een heroïsche editie van Gent-Wevelgem gereden. En we hebben dit volgend podium uiteindelijk...
So, hopefully we're going to see the riders making their appearance on the podium. Not sure whether we'll just manage to see Luca Paolini on the podium before we get... Oh, it's actually the women's race.
En zoals het bij dames hoort, geen bloemen meisjes, maar bloemen heren. Het zijn de bloemen heren Fabio en Philippe die de kus en bloemen gaan uitdelen. Ook de tweede gaat zometeen in de bloemetjeslotter zijn. Ze komen uit Nederland. Een heel warm applaus voor de tweede in Wevelgem met de dames Janneke en Sing. En hoe zij krijgt verdiende kussen en bloemen overhandigd. En er was er nog eentje sterker. Ook dat is een talent bij onze Noorderburen. Een absoluut groot talent, de naam van de toekomst. Winnares van Gent Wevelgem met de dames 2015. Applaus voor Floortje McKay, dames en heren.
So Floortje McKay gets the victory. Chloe Hosking, great third place for the Wiggle Honda rider. And that is a famous victory. Janneke Ensing getting up for second place. And we're not going to see the men's podium, unfortunately. Great win for Luca Paolini. Great day of racing in Wevelgem from myself and Brian. It's goodbye.